Antigran, sprawling epic of the Roman Empire, filled with tales of conquest, betrayal, and enduring glory. Some reigns are but fleeting moments, yet these brief chapters can resonate through history with the force of 1,000 years. This is the story of one such emperor, a man whose time on the throne was tragically short but incandescently bright. His name was Titus. Titus Flavius Vespasianus, the elder son of the pragmatic Emperor was born into a world of immense power and expectation. He was groomed not just for command, but for something far rarer: to be loved by the Roman people. His early life was a masterclass in Roman virtue, a decorated military commander, an adept administrator, and a charismatic figure who moved easily through the highest echelons of society. He was the architect of one of Rome's most decisive and brutal military victories, the final, crushing end to the Great Jewish Revolt and the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. This victory, commemorated by the Arch of Titus that still stands in Rome today, cemented his status as a military hero, a worthy heir to his father's new Flavian dynasty. When Vespasian died in the summer of 79 AD, the throne passed seamlessly to Titus. For the first time in decades, Rome witnessed a peaceful, biological succession from father to son. The city held its breath. Titus, the conqueror of Jerusalem, was known for his ruthlessness in his father's service. The Roman historian Suetonius tells us he was feared and even detested, seen as a potential second Nero, indulgent, cruel, and unpredictable. Whispers of his extravagant lifestyle and his controversial love affair with the Jewish queen, Bernice, fueled the Senate's anxiety. Would this powerful heir become a tyrant? But the man who took the purple was not the man they feared. It was as if the weight of the empire itself transformed him. Titus immediately set about dispelling the fears that had preceded him. He sent his beloved Bernice away from Rome to quell the political scandal. He declared that he would take on no new prosecutions for treason, a common tool of terror used by past emperors. He respected the Senate, curtailed the rampant use of informants, and put on lavish games for the people, not out of vanity, but from a genuine desire to bring joy. He famously declared that a day in which he had done no good deed for anyone was a day wasted. The Romans, so wary at first, were utterly captivated. They began to call him Amor Aci Delicia, Humani, Generos, the love and delight of the human race. His compassion was put to the ultimate test almost immediately. In August of 79 AD, just 2 months into his reign, the ground in Campania began to tremble. Then, with a cataclysmic roar that was heard for hundreds of miles, Mount Vesuvius, a column of ash, stone, and superheated gas shot miles into the sky, before collapsing onto the bustling Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. They were wiped from the face of the earth, buried in an instant, their people frozen in time. It was an unprecedented natural disaster. While a lesser ruler might have faltered, Titus rose to the occasion. He didn't just send condolences from his palace in Rome. He traveled to the disaster zone himself to oversee the relief efforts. He appointed special commissioners and poured his own personal funds, as well as funds from the imperial treasury, into aiding the survivors and rebuilding the region. He used the estates of wealthy victims who had died without heirs to fund the recovery, ensuring their wealth served the community they had left behind. His hands-on, deeply personal response was a source of immense comfort and inspiration to a reeling populace. He was not a distant god emperor, but a fellow Roman, sharing in their grief and leading them through the darkness. But the heavens, it seemed, were not finished testing Titus. The very next year, in 88, as Rome was still grappling with the aftermath of Vesuvius, a great fire swept through the capital itself. For 3 days and 3 nights, the blaze raged, consuming iconic landmarks like the Pantheon, the Baths of Agrippa, and even parts of the Capitoline Hill, which had only just been rebuilt after a fire a decade earlier. And as if that weren't enough, the fire was followed by one of the worst plagues the city had ever seen. The delight of the human race was now presiding over an era of almost biblical calamity. Once again, Titus refused to despair. He treated the city's devastation as a personal loss. He sold off furnishings from his own imperial villas to raise money for relief and reconstruction. He took on the role of a public priest, performing all the necessary rituals and sacrifices to appease the gods, shouldering the spiritual burden of his people. He personally oversaw aid to the sick, demonstrating a level of empathy and duty that astonished his contemporaries. Through fire, plague, and volcanic fury, Titus proved that his compassion was not a performance. It was the core of his character. His reign was one of monumental construction, not just reconstruction. He completed the Flavian amphitheater, the project begun by his father, and inaugurated it with 100 days of spectacular games. We know it today as the Colosseum, a monument not just to Roman engineering, but to the Flavian effort to give back to the people. He also built a magnificent new public bath complex, the Baths of Titus, right next to it, further cementing his legacy as a benefactor of the Roman public. Yet, this golden period of compassion and resilience was destined to be tragically brief. In the summer of 81 AD, after ruling for just 2 years, 2 months, and 20 days, Titus fell ill with a fever and died. His last words, according to Suetonius, were, "I lament I have made but one mistake." What was this mistake? Historians have debated it for centuries. Was it a specific policy? A personal regret? Or was it, perhaps, a lament that he hadn't sent his younger brother Domitian away, the brother who would succeed him and whose reign would be marked by the very tyranny Titus had worked so hard to avoid? We may never know. The Roman people mourned him with a sincerity rarely seen for an emperor. The Senate, which had once feared him, immediately deified him, officially recognizing him as a god. His short reign became a benchmark for all future emperors, a golden age in miniature. Rulers for centuries to come would be praised by comparing them to Augustus and wishing them to be more fortunate than Augustus, better than Trajan, but the implicit hope was that they might also capture the beloved spirit of Titus. So how do we remember this man? Was he the ruthless conqueror of Jerusalem, or the delight of the human race? The truth is, he was both. He was a complex figure, a product of his violent times who somehow rose above them to embody a Roman ideal of clemency and public duty. His story is a poignant reminder that history is not just a chronicle of years and battles, but of character, and that even the briefest moments of enlightened leadership can leave an eternal legacy. He was the emperor of compassion who reigned through calamity, a bright, fleeting light in the long story of Rome. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into the life of Emperor Titus interesting, please hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel for more stories from history, and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think Titus's one mistake was? Until next time, stay curious. Hello history buffs, and welcome back to our deep dive into the Flavian dynasty. Last time, we set the stage, exploring the chaotic year of the 4 emperors. Now, let's turn back the clock and meet the man who would eventually bring stability back to Rome, but not in the way you might expect. We're talking about the elder son, Titus Flavius. The year is 39 CE. The Roman Empire is under the unpredictable rule of Caligula. Far from the lavish palaces and political intrigue of the capital, in a small town called Flacrina near Rete, a baby boy is born. This isn't a story of a prince born into power. This is the story of Titus, a boy from a family on the rise, but still very much outsiders. His family, the Flavians, were what you might call new money. His grandfather, Titus Flavius Petro, was a centurion and later a tax collector, a respectable but hardly glamorous profession. His father, the man we know as Emperor Vespasian, was the first in the family to become a senator. A huge step up, but he still had to claw his way through the ranks. So, while the Herculaneums, the established aristocracy of Rome, looked down their noses at families like the Flavians, this humble background would prove to be a defining advantage. Growing up, Titus wouldn't be shielded by the trappings of immense inherited wealth or ancient lineage. Instead, he was raised with a strong work ethic, an understanding of military life, and a keen awareness of provincial affairs. His childhood wasn't spent in opulent villas in Rome, but likely in the various places his father's career took him. This gave him a perspective that many of the pampered elite lacked. He saw the empire not just from the top down, but from the ground up. Imagine young Titus, not as a future emperor, but as the son of a hard-working public servant. He would have been educated in the standard Roman curriculum, rhetoric, literature, and law. But his real education was happening on the move. His father, Vespasian, was a shrewd and practical man, and you can be sure he instilled these values in his son. The Flavians knew they couldn't rely on a famous family name to get ahead. They had to be smarter, tougher, and more capable than their aristocratic rivals. This upbringing fostered a sense of ambition, not of entitlement, but of merit. Interestingly, Titus's early life wasn't entirely separate from the imperial court. Due to his father's rising status, Titus was actually educated in the imperial court alongside Britannicus, the son of Emperor Claudius. This was an incredible opportunity. It meant he received the best education possible and, more importantly, it gave him a front-row seat to the inner workings of power, its dangers, and its temptations. He became close friends with Britannicus, a friendship that would end in tragedy when Britannicus was allegedly poisoned. By Nero legend, has it that Titus was present at that fateful dinner and even tasted the poisoned drink, suffering a brief illness himself. This early exposure to the brutal reality of imperial politics must have left a lasting impression on the young man. It was a harsh lesson that power in Rome was a deadly game. This unique combination of a practical, non-aristocratic upbringing and a privileged education at the heart of the empire created a fascinating and complex individual. He had the polish and connections of a court insider, but the grit and pragmatism of a man whose family had to earn their place. He wasn't born with a silver spoon. He was forged in the fires of ambition and political turmoil. He learned to navigate the treacherous currents of the Roman elite while never forgetting the more grounded values of his family. As he grew into a young man, Titus was known for his charm, intelligence, and physical prowess. He was handsome, skilled with weapons, and a gifted poet and orator. He had all the makings of a Roman ideal, but with an approachable and affable nature that set him apart from the often arrogant nobility. People were drawn to him. He was a natural leader, but one who seemed to wear his talents lightly. This combination of skill and charisma would serve him incredibly well in his future military and political career. So, when we think of Titus, let's move past the simple image of an emperor. Let's see him as the product of a specific time and place. A boy from a humble, striving family who, through a combination of his father's ambition, a top-tier education, and a dose of courtly danger, was uniquely prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. He was the new face of the Roman elite, one built on merit and experience, not just ancestry. This foundation, laid in the Italian countryside and hardened in the imperial palace, was the bedrock upon which the future emperor would be built. The seeds of the Flavian dynasty's success were sown not in grandeur, but in the diligent, determined, and often overlooked soil of the Italian provinces. Join us next time as we follow Titus from his formative years into his first real test, the military campaigns that would begin to build his reputation and set him on the path to greatness. He's about to step onto the world stage, and the Roman Empire will never be the same. Thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying this journey through Roman history, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to our series on the Roman emperors. Today, we're diving into the formative years of a man destined for greatness, Titus Flavius, or as we simply know him, Titus. Chapter 3. Educated for empire. Before he was the conqueror of Jerusalem or the beloved emperor, Titus was a young boy being meticulously shaped for power. His father, Vespasian, was no ordinary Roman. He was a pragmatic, ambitious general on the rise, and he saw in his eldest son the future of their family, the Flavian dynasty. Vespasian wasn't just a father. He was a mentor, a strategist, and the chief architect of his son's education. Unlike many aristocratic youths who were simply handed tutors and left to their own devices, Titus's education was a hands-on project for Vespasian. It wasn't just about reading the classics. It was about building a complete Roman leader. The curriculum had 3 core pillars: rhetoric, the art of persuasion; military strategy, the art of command; and philosophy, the art of ruling with wisdom and justice. Let's start with rhetoric. In Rome, words were weapons. A powerful speech could sway the Senate, rally legions, or pacify a rebellious province. Titus was trained by the finest orators of his day. He learned to construct arguments, to command a room with his voice, and to choose his words with the precision of a surgeon. This wasn't just about public speaking. It was about understanding human psychology, knowing how to inspire loyalty and project authority. His father knew that an emperor who couldn't command a crowd was an emperor on borrowed time. Titus excelled, becoming known for his eloquent and persuasive style, a skill that would serve him immeasurably in his future career. Next, we have military strategy. This wasn't taught from dusty scrolls alone. Titus grew up in military camps, breathing the air of the legions. Vespasian, a veteran of campaigns in Britain and Germania, made sure his son understood warfare from the ground up. Titus learned logistics, siegecraft, and battlefield tactics, not just in theory, but in practice. He served as a military tribune in both Germania and Britannia, a real-world apprenticeship in leadership. He rode alongside the soldiers, ate their rations, and earned their respect not through his name, but through his competence and courage. Vespasian instilled in him a crucial lesson. A true commander leads from the front and understands the life of the common soldier. This experience forged a bond between Titus and the army that would become the bedrock of his power. But power without wisdom is tyranny. This brings us to the third pillar, philosophy. While Romans were often suspicious of Greek philosophy, Vespasian recognized its value in shaping a just and temperate ruler. Titus studied the works of the Stoics, who taught self-control, duty, and resilience in the face of adversity. This wasn't about abstract contemplation. It was about building character. Stoicism provided an ethical framework for wielding immense power, teaching that a ruler's duty was to the state and its people, not to his own desires. This philosophical grounding is often credited for the clemency and generosity that would later define his reign. It tempered his military ambition with a sense of responsibility, shaping him into the kind of leader people would not just obey, but genuinely admire. Titus also spent part of his youth at the imperial court of Claudius, and later Nero. This was an education of a different, more dangerous kind. He befriended Claudius's son, Britannicus, and according to the historians, was present on the night Britannicus was poisoned. He even reportedly tasted the poisoned drink and suffered a serious illness as a result. This experience gave him a chilling, first-hand look at the brutal, paranoid, and treacherous nature of court politics. He learned to navigate intrigue, to recognize threats, and to survive in an environment where a wrong word could mean death. It was a harsh but invaluable lesson in the realities of absolute power. So when we look at Titus, we see a man who was not simply born into privilege, but was actively forged for it. Vespasian's guidance was the driving force. He combined the intellectual rigor of rhetoric and philosophy with the gritty, hands-on experience of a soldier. He exposed his son to the highest echelons of power and its darkest perils. This comprehensive, three-dimensional education created a leader who was as comfortable delivering a speech in the Senate as he was commanding a legion on the battlefield. A man who understood both the art of war and the art of governance. Titus was not just Vespasian's son. He was his greatest project. This investment in his education was an investment in the future of the Flavian name and, ultimately, in the stability of the Roman Empire. The boy who was educated for empire would soon be called upon to prove his worth in one of the most brutal and significant wars of the first century, a conflict that would cement his name in history forever. Thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this journey through Roman history, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time. Welcome back to our series on the Roman emperors. Today, we dive into one of the most chaotic, yet pivotal, periods in Roman history, the year of the four emperors, and witness the meteoric rise of a family that would change Rome forever, the Flavians. The year is 68 AD. The infamous Emperor Nero is dead, leaving a massive power vacuum. His death triggers a brutal civil war, a mad scramble for the throne known as the Year of the Four Emperors. In rapid succession, Galba, Otho, and Vitellius seize power, only to be violently overthrown. Rome is bleeding, its legions turning on one another, and the very fabric of the empire seems to be tearing apart. while the heart of the empire convulses in chaos. Far to the east, in the rebellious province of Judea, a general named Vespasian is quietly, methodically, and brutally crushing a massive revolt. He's not a member of the old, blue-blooded aristocracy. Vespasian is a new man from a humble equestrian family. He's a pragmatic, known-and-sent soldier who has earned his reputation through decades of loyal service and sheer competence on the battlefield. Alongside him is his eldest son, Titus. Titus isn't just riding his father's coattails. He's a brilliant commander in his own right. He's charismatic, brave, and has earned the deep respect and loyalty of the soldiers serving under him. Together, father and son are a formidable team, commanding some of the most seasoned and battle-hardened legions in the entire Roman army. As news of the escalating chaos in Rome reaches the eastern provinces, the soldiers in Judea, Egypt, and Syria start to get restless. They look at the pretenders fighting over Rome Galba, Otho Vitellius' hands, see them as weak, decadent, or simply unworthy. Then they look at their own commander, Vespasian. They see a proven leader, a man of discipline and military genius, someone who can restore order and stability. On July 1st, 69 AD, the legions in Egypt take a monumental step. They declare Vespasian emperor. Soon, the legions in Judea and Syria follow suit. This isn't a decision made by senators in togas. This is a decision made by soldiers with swords in their hands. They believe Vespasian is the only man who can save the empire from itself. Vespasian is a shrewd strategist. He knows a direct march on Rome would be long and difficult. Instead, he plays the long game. He secures the vital grain supply from Egypt, effectively putting a chokehold on Rome's food source. This move is brilliant. It applies immense pressure on his rival Vitellius, without risking his main force in a premature battle. He entrusts the final stages of the Judean war to his son, Titus, a sign of immense confidence in his abilities. This frees Vespasian to focus on the bigger picture, winning the imperial throne. Meanwhile, he dispatches his allies and other loyal legions, led by commanders like Mucianus and Antonius Primus, to march on Italy. The campaign is swift and brutal. The Danubian legions, fiercely loyal to Vespasian, clash with Vitellius's forces in northern Italy. The Second Battle of Bedriacum is a decisive, bloody victory for the Flavians. The path to Rome is now open. As Vespasian's forces converge on the city, Rome descends into one final, horrifying spasm of violence. The battle for the capital is fought street by street, house by house. The city burns, and thousands perish in the fighting. Finally, Vitellius is captured, dragged through the streets, and brutally killed. By the end of December 69 AD, the Senate officially recognizes Vespasian as the new emperor. The year of the four emperors is over. From the chaos and bloodshed, a new dynasty is born. The Flavian dynasty. Vespasia, the practical soldier from a modest background, has achieved the impossible. He has climbed to the very pinnacle of power, not through birthright, but through military success and the loyalty of his legions. His victory wasn't just a personal triumph. It was a fundamental shift in Roman politics. It proved that an emperor could be made outside of Rome. It demonstrated that the support of the legions was the ultimate source of power. Vespasian's success in Judea wasn't just a provincial campaign. It was the forge that created an emperor and secured his family's legacy. He had proven his ability to command and to win qualities the empire desperately needed. Vespasian's rise marked the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty and the beginning of a new era of stability and restoration. He would go on to heal the wounds of civil war, restore the state's finances, and launch massive building projects, including the iconic Colosseum. And it all began here, in the smoke and fury of the Judean War, and the bloody anarchy of 69 AD, where a general and his son proved their worth and seized their destiny. Thanks for joining us on this journey into Roman history. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about the emperors who shaped the ancient world, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'll see you next time. Welcome back to our series on the Flavian dynasty. Today, we're diving into a pivotal and somber chapter in Roman history. The First Jewish-Roman War, and the rise of a man who would forever be linked to it, Titus. When rebellion first erupted in the province of Judea in 66 CE, Rome initially underestimated the scale of the uprising. The governor of Syria was repulsed, a Roman legion was humiliated, and Emperor Nero realized this was a serious crisis. He needed his best general, a man known for his experience and unwavering loyalty, and accompanying Vespasian, ASE's second-in-command and trusted son, was Titus. Titus wasn't a newcomer to military life. He had already served as a military tribune in both Germania and Battania, earning a reputation for courage and competence. He was a charismatic and capable officer, respected by the soldiers under his command. Now, in Judea, he would face his greatest test. The campaign began in Galilee in 67 CE. Vespasian and Titus, leading a massive force of over 60,000 Roman soldiers and local auxiliaries, moved with methodical and brutal efficiency. They weren't just fighting an army, they were pacifying an entire region. Towns and fortresses that resisted were besieged, captured, and often razed. The historian Josephus, who was initially a Jewish commander in Galilee before his capture, provides a vivid, first-hand account of the Roman war machine in action. He describes the disciplined legions, their sophisticated siege equipment, and their relentless advance. Titus was at the forefront of this campaign. He commanded legions, led cavalry charges, and distinguished himself in the sieges of key cities like Jotapata and Gamla. Josephus, who later became a client of the Flavians, makes sure to highlight Titus's personal bravery. He recounts instances where Titus was the first to breach a wall or led a daring reconnaissance mission, narrowly escaping danger. While we should read Josephus with a critical eye, it's clear that Titus was actively involved in the fighting, building his military resume and earning the adoration of his troops. The tide of the war turned not just on the battlefields of Judea, but in the heart of Rome itself. The year 69 CE became known as the Year of the Four Emperors. After Nero's death, a chaotic civil war erupted. Galba, Otho, and Vitellius all briefly claimed the throne before being overthrown. Seeing the power vacuum, the Eastern legions, full of battle-hardened veterans loyal to their commander, proclaimed Vespasian emperor. Vespasian knew his duty was now in Rome, to secure the throne and stabilize the empire. But the war in Judea was not over. He entrusted its conclusion to the person he trusted most in the world, his son, Titus. At just 29 years old, Titus was given supreme command of the Roman forces, tasked with conquering the heart of the rebellion. The city of Jerusalem in 70 CE, was not just a city. It was a spiritual and political center of the Jewish people. It was a formidable fortress, protected by massive walls and a rugged topography, but its greatest weakness was internal. The city was packed with refugees and pilgrims, and worse, it was torn apart by bitter infighting between rival rebel factions. They fought each other in the streets, even as the Roman legions were massing outside the walls. This tragic division would prove fatal. Titus arrived with 4 legions, and began one of the most infamous sieges in ancient history. The Roman strategy was systematic. First, they cleared the area around the city, destroying gardens and suburbs to create a clear field of fire and deny resources to the defenders. Then, the real work began. The construction of massive siege towers, battering rams and earthen ramps to assault the city's 3 main walls. The fighting was ferocious. The defenders, despite their internal conflicts, fought with desperate courage. They launched surprise attacks, attempted to burn the Roman siege engines, and contested every inch of ground. Titus himself was constantly on the front lines, directing the assault and encouraging his men. According to the histories, he was wounded in the shoulder during one of these skirmishes. After weeks of brutal combat, the Romans breached the first and then the second wall. They pushed the defenders back into the eastern part of the city in the fortified Temple Mount to completely cut off the city and starve out the remaining resistance. Titus ordered the construction of a massive wall of circumvallation, a 5-mile-long siege wall that completely encircled Jerusalem. What followed was a humanitarian catastrophe. Josephus describes scenes of unimaginable horror within the besieged city. Famine gripped the population. People ate whatever they could find: leather, straw, and worse. The city streets were filled with the dead and dying. It was a slow, agonizing descent into despair, all while the relentless Roman assault continued just outside the walls. The final act of the siege centered on two key locations: the Antonia fortress, which guarded the Temple Mount, and the temple itself. After a fierce struggle, the Antonia fortress fell. This gave the Romans a direct staging ground to attack the sacred heart of Judaism, the Second Temple. The destruction of the temple is a moment shrouded in conflicting accounts and immense tragedy. Josephus claims that Titus wanted to preserve the magnificent structure and gave orders not to burn it. He portrays the fire as an accident, started by a Roman soldier who, in the heat of battle, threw a firebrand into one of the temple's chambers against orders. However, other sources, and even a logical reading of the situation, suggest this might be an attempt by Josephus to absolve his patron Titus of the ultimate responsibility. For many Romans, the temple was the symbol of the rebellion. Destroying it would be the ultimate act of conquest, a definitive statement of Roman power. Whether by accident or by design, the result was the same. The fire spread rapidly through the cedar-beamed structure, consuming the holy site in a massive inferno. The destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE was a cataclysmic event, one that has echoed through Jewish history ever since. Even with the temple in ashes, the fighting wasn't over. The remaining defenders retreated to the upper and lower city, making a final, hopeless stand. The Romans methodically cleared the city, street by street, showing little mercy. By September of 70 CE, the entire city of Jerusalem was under Roman control. It was systematically plundered and torn down, with only a few towers left standing as a monument to its former strength and a warning to any who would defy Rome. Titus, the victorious commander, returned to Rome not just as a general, but as the son of the emperor and a hero of the empire. He and his father Vespasian celebrated a magnificent triumph, a grand parade showcasing the spoils of war, including sacred objects taken from the temple, like the menorah and the table of showbread. These scenes are famously immortalized on the Arch of Titus in the Roman Forum, a monument that stands to this day as a testament to his victory. The siege of Jerusalem was the defining moment of Titus's career. It cemented his reputation as a formidable military leader, showcased his resolve, and paved his way to the imperial throne. But it was a victory achieved at a terrible cost, forever marking his legacy with the destruction of a holy city and its sacred temple. This campaign would shape not only the future of the Roman Empire, but the very course of history for the Jewish people. Thank you so much for joining us for this chapter. The story of the Flavians is far from over. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode, where we'll explore Titus's reign as emperor. See you next time. The year is 71 CE Rome. The heart of an empire is buzzing with an energy it hasn't felt in years. The Civil War, the dreaded year of the four emperors, is finally over. A new dynasty, the Flavians, has risen from the ashes, and its founders, Emperor Vespasian and his son Titus, are coming home. But they are not returning quietly. They are returning in triumph. Imagine the scene. The streets of Rome are packed shoulder to shoulder. People have climbed onto rooftops, jostled for position on balconies, all desperate to catch a glimpse of the procession. This isn't just any parade. It's a triumphus, the highest honor a Roman general could receive. And today, Rome is witnessing a rare double triumph. A father and a son, side by side, celebrating a victory that has secured their family's power and restored stability to the empire. The First Jewish-Roman War had been a brutal, grueling conflict. For years, the province of Judea had resisted Roman rule. Vespasian had been the general sent to quell the rebellion. And when the chaos of 69 CE called him to Rome to claim the imperial throne, he left his eldest son, Titus, to finish the job. Titus did more than finish it. He concluded it with a dramatic and devastating siege of Jerusalem. Now, the war is won, and the spoils are being brought to Rome. The air is thick with the scent of incense and flowers, thrown by the cheering crowds. The procession itself is a spectacle of unimaginable wealth and power. First come the senators and magistrates, dressed in their finest robes, their presence a formal acknowledgement of the Flavian victory. Then, the sound of trumpets cuts through the air, announcing the main event. Carts, groaning under the weight of plunder, roll down the sacred way. These are not just sacks of gold and silver. These are the sacred treasures, disgusted from the temple in Jerusalem. The great golden menorah, its 7 branches, a symbol of a faith now subjugated, is paraded for all to see. The table of showbread and silver trumpets are also on display, physical proof of Rome's might. The historian Josephus, an eyewitness to these events, tells us that the sheer volume of gold and silver was staggering, a testament to the wealth of the conquered land. Massive, elaborate floats, like ancient parade floats, depict scenes from the war. They show battles, cities under siege, and armies clashing. They are moving storyboards, a visual narrative of the Flavian military achievement, designed to awe the Roman populace and remind any potential rivals of the price of rebellion. These are not subtle displays. They are raw, powerful propaganda, communicating the message: we are the saviors of Rome. We are the peacemakers. Following the spoils come the captives. Thousands of prisoners of war, chained and weary, are marched through the streets. They are a living, breathing symbol of Rome's victory. Their despair is a stark contrast to the jubilation of the Roman crowd. For them, this parade is the final humiliation, a public confirmation of their defeat. At the head of this sorrowful procession are the leaders of the rebellion, Simon Bar Giora and John of Giscala, destined for a grim fate at the end of the parade route. And then they appear, Vespasian and Titus, riding in separate chariots, but united in their glory. They are dressed in the traditional garb of the triumphator, a purple toga embroidered with gold, a laurel wreath on their heads. Their faces are painted red, in imitation of the ancient statue of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, the king of the gods. For this one day, they are more than men. They are semi-divine figures, embodying the majesty and invincibility of Rome itself. Titus, young and charismatic, is the hero of the hour. He is the one who conquered Jerusalem, the general who brought the long war to a close. His father, Vespasian, is the new emperor, the steady hand who pulled Rome back from the brink of collapse. Their joint triumph is a masterstroke of political theater. It links the father's new imperial authority with the son's military glory, establishing a clear line of succession. This isn't just about one victory. It's about founding a dynasty. The procession wends its way through the city, passing a forum still bearing the scars of the recent civil war. It's a powerful reminder of what the Flavians have overcome. They aren't just celebrating a foreign victory. They are celebrating the restoration of domestic peace. The parade is a promise. The chaos is over. A new era of stability and prosperity has begun. This is the Pax Flavia, the Flavian peace. As the procession reaches the Capitoline Hill, the religious heart of the city, the ritual reaches its climax. Sacrifices are made to Jupiter. Simon Bar Giora, the captured rebel leader, is taken to the Tullianum, Rome's notorious prison, and executed. His death is the final act of the war, a brutal but necessary part of the ritual. With the enemy leader gone, the triumph is officially complete. The celebrations, however, continue for days. Grand feasts are held for the public. Vespasian and Titus use a portion of the vast wealth brought from Judea to fund magnificent building projects. The most famous of these will be the Flavian Amphitheater, a structure we now know as the Colosseum. Built on the grounds of Nero's extravagant golden house, its construction is a symbolic act. Land that a despised tyrant had taken for his private pleasure was being returned to the people of Rome in the form of the largest entertainment venue the world had ever seen. The Colosseum, funded by the spoils of this very triumph, would stand for centuries as the ultimate symbol of Flavian power and generosity. This trump of 71 CE was more than just a victory parade. It was the foundational event of the Flavian dynasty. It cemented Vespasian's legitimacy as emperor, showcased Titus as his worthy heir, and presented a powerful narrative of strength and restoration to a people who desperately needed it. It was a spectacle of power, wealth, and propaganda, all masterfully orchestrated to signal the dawn of a new age for Rome. The legacy of this day, of the Flavians, would be written in stone and mortar, echoing through the annals of history for millennia to come. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to ancient Rome. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the past, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories from history. Your support means the world. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey through the Flavian dynasty. Today, we arrive at Chapter 7, The Prince of Rome. After the chaos of the Year of the Four Emperors, Rome was desperate for stability. Vespasian, the grizzled no-nonsense general, had secured the throne. But what about the future? How could he ensure his new dynasty wouldn't crumble after his death? The answer was his eldest son, Titus. From the moment Vespasian took power, it was clear that Titus was being groomed not just as an heir, but as a partner. This wasn't a subtle hint. It was a masterclass in succession planning. Vespasian immediately began showering Titus with honors and responsibilities, weaving him into the very fabric of imperial power. He was made consul multiple times, a rare honor, and shared the tribunician power with his father, a key authority of the emperor. Vespasian was sending a clear message to the Senate, the army, and the people of Rome. This is my son, and he is my chosen successor. His authority is my authority. But the most significant role Vespasian gave Titus was that of Praetorian Prefect. This was a truly unprecedented move. The Praetorian Guard was the emperor's personal bodyguard, the elite military force stationed in Rome. Their commander, the prefect, held immense power. Historically, this post was always given to a man of the equestrian order, a lower-ranking aristocrat, to prevent anyone from becoming too powerful and threatening the emperor. By appointing his own son, a senator and a Caesar, to the position, Vespasian shattered tradition. Why did he do it? It was a brilliant, if risky, stroke of genius. Firstly, it placed the most powerful military force in the capital, directly under the control of his most trusted family member. The loyalty of the Praetorian Guard was now guaranteed. No ambitious prefect could dream of staging a coup, because the prefect was the heir apparent himself. This instantly neutralized one of the biggest threats to any emperor's reign. Secondly, it gave Titus practical, hands-on experience in security and administration right at the heart of the empire. As Praetorian Prefect, he wasn't just a ceremonial figure. He commanded thousands of elite soldiers, managed intelligence gathering, and even presided over a judicial court. He became, in effect, Vespasian's head of security and chief enforcer. This was tough, often dirty work. It involved overseeing trials, carrying out executions, and quelling any signs of dissent. Titus took to the role with a vigor that sometimes alarmed the Roman elite. The historian Suetonius tells us he acted rather too high-handedly and violently. He would dispatch agents to the theaters and camps to spread rumors and then arrest those who reacted negatively. He even had a prominent general, Aulus Caecina, who had switched allegiance to Vespasian during the Civil War, summarily executed. Titus claimed to have found proof of a conspiracy and had Caecina killed as he was leaving a dinner party at the palace. This was a ruthless act, carried out without a formal trial, and it earned Titus a reputation for being harsh and potentially tyrannical. The Roman aristocracy watched with a mixture of awe and apprehension. They saw a young man who was not afraid to get his hands dirty to protect his father's throne, while Vespasian was the public face of the new order restoring the finances, building magnificent structures, and projecting an image of a traditional, down-to-earth ruler. Titus was the power behind the throne, the enforcer in the shadows. He was the bad cop to Vespasian's good cop. This partnership was incredibly effective. Vespasian could maintain his popular image as a restorer of peace and tradition, while Titus handled the necessary but unpopular tasks of eliminating threats and maintaining order. It was a shared rule in everything but name. They appeared together on coins. Their names were inscribed together on public buildings, and they shared the grandest of triumphs, the one celebrating their victory in the Jewish War. The message couldn't be clearer. This wasn't just the reign of Vespasian, it was the reign of the Flavians. The Senate, which had seen emperors come and go with terrifying speed, understood the new reality. They had little choice but to accept this new model of power. Vespasian wasn't asking for their permission to make Titus his heir. He was presenting it as a fact. By making Titus co-ruler in practice, he was ensuring a seamless transition of power. When the time came, there would be no question, no power vacuum, and no room for another civil war. However, Titus's reputation was a double-edged sword. While his actions secured the dynasty, they also created fear. People wondered what kind of emperor he would be. Would this ruthless Praetorian prefect become a tyrant once he held sole power? There were whispers about his extravagant parties, his questionable friends, and his passionate and controversial love affair with the Jewish queen Bernice. Many Romans feared that the son was nothing like the frugal and disciplined father. They worried that the stability Vespasian had worked so hard to build would be squandered by a reckless and indulgent successor. So, as Vespasian's reign progressed, Titus stood as a complex and formidable figure. The loyal son, the ruthless enforcer, the heir apparent, and a man whose future reign was viewed with both hope and trepidation. He was the Prince of Rome, learning the brutal calculus of power at his father's side, preparing for the day when the empire would be his alone. The foundation for the Flavian future was laid, but the character of that future, under Emperor Titus, was still a worrying unknown. Thanks for watching. We've seen how Titus was groomed for power, but the man he became as emperor would surprise everyone. Join us next time as we explore the dramatic and unexpected reign of Titus. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Welcome back to our series on the Flavian dynasty. Last time, we left Titus, the celebrated conqueror of Jerusalem, basking in the glory of his military triumphs. He was the hero of Rome, the darling of the people, and the heir apparent to his father Vespasian. But the path to power is rarely a smooth one, and as Titus stood on the cusp of greatness, dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. This is the story of scandal, shadows, and the trials that nearly derailed the future emperor. The central figure in this drama, aside from Titus himself, was a woman of immense power, intelligence, and charm, Queen Bernice of Judea. She was no stranger to the corridors of power. A member of the Herodian dynasty, she was well-educated, politically astute, and had navigated the treacherous politics of the eastern provinces for years. She had allied herself with the Flavians during the Jewish-Roman War, providing crucial support to Vespasian and Titus. It was during this time that a deep and passionate romance blossomed between Titus and the queen, who was about a decade his senior. When Titus returned to Rome, Bernice eventually followed. She lived with him in the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill. For all intents and purposes, they lived as husband and wife. For Titus, this was the woman he loved. He was reportedly so devoted to her that he had promised marriage. But for the Roman public and the senatorial elite, this was not a fairy tale romance. It was a looming political catastrophe. Why such a hostile reaction? The reasons were complex and deeply rooted in Roman identity and history. First, there was the deep-seated Roman prejudice against powerful foreign queens. The memory of Cleopatra, the Egyptian queen who had captivated two of Rome's most powerful men, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, was still very much alive. Cleopatra was seen as a symbol of Eastern decadence and a threat to Roman values. The affair between Antony and Cleopatra had led to a devastating civil war. Now, a century later, Romans saw a chilling parallel. Here was another powerful Eastern queen, living in the heart of Rome with the heir to the throne. The whispers started. Was Titus another Antony? Would this foreign queen corrupt their hero and, through him, the empire itself? Bernice's Jewish identity was another significant hurdle. Despite her Romanized lifestyle and political support for the Flavians, the recent, brutal war in Judea had left a bitter taste. Anti-Jewish sentiment was high in Rome. For many, it was unthinkable that the conqueror of Jerusalem would marry a queen from the very people he had just subjugated. It was seen as an insult to the soldiers who had fought and died in the war, and a betrayal of Roman victory. The idea of a Jewish empress was simply more than the Roman populace could stomach. The public's disapproval wasn't just expressed in quiet murmurs. It was loud and public. At the theater, a place where the Roman people often voiced their collective opinions, actors made pointed, satirical jokes about the relationship. The crowds would roar with laughter and approval, sending a clear and unambiguous message to the palace. The Roman historian, Cassius Dio, tells us of a particularly bold incident where a cynic philosopher named Diogenes appeared in the theater and openly denounced the couple. A risky move that resulted in him being flogged. The message was clear. This relationship was toxic to Titus's public image. This wasn't just a popularity contest. It was a direct threat to the stability of the Flavian dynasty. Vespasian had come to power after the bloody year of the 4 emperors, and his primary goal was to establish a lasting, stable dynasty. The last thing he needed was his chosen heir embroiled in a scandal that could alienate the Senate, the military, and the people. The fear of tyranny was a constant undercurrent in Roman politics. The Romans had thrown out their kings centuries before, and they were always on guard against any man who seemed to be accumulating too much personal power or behaving like a monarch. Titus' open defiance of public opinion in favor of his personal feelings for Bernice was seen as a dangerous sign of autocratic behavior. He made him look like an Eastern-style despot, not a Roman princeps. First among equals. Adding to these fears were Titus's own actions as the Praetorian prefect. This was the commander of the elite Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal bodyguards. Traditionally, this powerful position was held by an equestrian, a member of the social class below the senators. Vespasian broke with tradition and appointed his own son, a senator, to the role. This gave Titus immense power, which he sometimes used ruthlessly. He was known to have his political rivals summarily executed without trial, often using agents to eliminate them. While this might have been done to protect his father's regime, it earned him a reputation for cruelty and fueled fears that he would be a tyrannical emperor, another Nero or Caligula. The combination was potent. A scandalous love affair with a foreign queen, a reputation for ruthlessness, and the appearance of ignoring Roman tradition and public sentiment. Titus, the celebrated hero, was now seen by many as a potential tyrant in the making. The pressure mounted from all sides, from the public, from the Senate, and likely from his own father, Vespasian, who understood the political realities of their situation. Titus found himself at a crossroads. He had to choose between his personal happiness and his public duty, between the woman he loved and the empire he was destined to rule. It must have been a heart-wrenching decision. He had promised Bernice marriage, a promise made from a place of genuine affection. But the weight of Rome, its history, its prejudices, and its future was on his shoulders. In the end, duty won, with what ancient sources describe as great reluctance and mutual sorrow. Titus sent Bernice away from Rome. Suetonius writes that he dismissed her unwilling and she unwilling. It was a public and painful sacrifice. He chose the empire over the queen. By doing so, he calmed the public outcry and reassured the Senate. He demonstrated that he was, first and foremost, a Roman willing to place the stability of the state above his own desires. It was a masterful political move that neutralized the biggest threat to his accession. This episode reveals a crucial aspect of Titus's character. He was not just a soldier. He was a shrewd politician who understood the delicate balance of power in Rome. He learned that the emperor's authority, even for a beloved hero, was not absolute. It depended on maintaining the goodwill of the people and the respect of the elite. The scandal of Bernice was his trial by fire, a harsh lesson in the realities of Roman power politics. He emerged from it with his popularity restored and his path to the throne cleared. When Vespasian died in 79 AD, Titus ascended to the imperial throne smoothly, without opposition. The fears of him being a cruel tyrant quickly evaporated. In a remarkable transformation, he proved to be one of Rome's most beloved emperors. He halted the treason trials, respected the Senate, and embarked on a massive program of public works and disaster relief. Most notably after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, it seemed the ruthless Praetorian prefect had been a role he played for his father, and the true Titus was a man of generosity and compassion. But we are left to wonder about the personal cost. Did he ever regret his choice? Did he ever see Bernice again? Some sources suggest she returned to Rome briefly, hoping to rekindle their romance, but was sent away once more. The man who became known as the delight of mankind had built his reign on a foundation of personal heartbreak. The shadows of his past had been dispelled, but they surely lingered in his memory. Thank you for joining us for this chapter in the life of Titus. His story is a powerful reminder that history is made not just by armies and laws, but by human hearts and difficult choices. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more stories from the ancient world. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next episode, where we will explore the reign of Titus as emperor and the cataclysmic eruption of Vesuvius. See you next time. Hello, history lovers, and welcome back to our deep dive into the Flavian dynasty. Today, we arrive at a pivotal moment, a transition of power that, for once in Roman history, didn't involve daggers in the dark or a full-blown civil war. We're talking about the year 79 CE, the year the formidable Emperor Vespasian met his end. After a decade of firm, pragmatic rule, Vespasian had done the unthinkable. He had stabilized Rome. He'd refilled the treasury, launched massive building projects like the Colosseum, and restored a sense of order after the chaotic year of the four emperors. He was a no-nonsense, salt-of-the-earth kind of ruler, famous for his wit, even on his deathbed. Unlike so many of his predecessors who met violent ends, Vespasian's passing was remarkably peaceful. At the age of 69, while suffering from a bout of illness, he insisted on trying to stand, believing an emperor should die on his feet. In that moment, he reportedly quipped, "Vi puto Deus, fio," which translates to, "Oh dear, I think I'm becoming a god." It was a wry, self-aware joke about the Roman tradition of deifying emperors. After their death, and with that classic Vespasian humor, the old soldier who had saved Rome from itself breathed his last. This peaceful death was a testament to his success. He had so thoroughly secured his family's position that his passing didn't trigger a power vacuum. The succession plan he had carefully laid for years was now put into motion. The empire wasn't up for grabs. It was to be inherited. And so, the imperial authority passed seamlessly to his eldest son, Titus. Now, this was the real test. Titus was a decorated military commander, the man who had conquered Jerusalem. He was popular with the army and had been groomed for this role his entire life, serving as his father's right-hand man. But his reputation wasn't spotless. In his youth, he had a reputation for being a bit of a ruthless enforcer for his father, and there were whispers about his extravagance and his controversial love affair with the Jewish queen, Bernice. The Roman elite were cautiously optimistic, but also a little nervous. Would Titus rule like his pragmatic father, or would his darker, more indulgent side emerge? Would he be another Nero, a charismatic youth who descends into tyranny? The question on everyone's mind was, what kind of emperor would Titus be? The city held its breath. The transfer of power was smooth, a monumental achievement in itself. Titus, now Emperor Titus, Flavius Vespasian, addressed the Senate and the people of Rome. He promised to rule in cooperation with them, to be a servant of the state, not its master. He immediately distanced himself from his more controversial past actions, even sending his beloved Bernice away from Rome to quell public anxiety. It was a clear signal. The party boy was gone, and the emperor had arrived. His initial moves were brilliant. He halted all treason trials, a common tool of terror for previous emperors. He publicly declared he would not accept accusations from anonymous informants, effectively shutting down a major source of political paranoia. He was generous, approachable, and seemed genuinely dedicated to the welfare of his people. The cautious optimism began to blossom into genuine affection. People started calling him the delight and darling of the human race. It seemed Rome had lucked out. After the stern but effective they now had a ruler who was not only competent, but also incredibly charismatic and beloved. Titus was shaping up to be everything the people could have hoped for. The Flavian dynasty seemed secure, the future of Rome looked bright, and an era of goodwill and prosperity appeared to be dawning. But as is so often the case in history, fate had other plans. Just as Titus's reign was hitting its stride, a shadow was looming in the south, a mountain that was about to unleash a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. A disaster that would test the new emperor and his golden age before it had even truly begun. The ground near the Bay of Naples had started to tremble. Join us next time as we witness the eruption of Mount Vesuvius and see how Emperor Titus, the darling of the human race, responds to one of the ancient world's most devastating natural disasters. It's a story of tragedy, resilience, and the true measure of a leader. Thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this journey through Roman history, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'll see you then. Hello history lovers, and welcome back to our journey through ancient Rome. Today, we stand at the precipice of one of history's greatest architectural and cultural milestones. Picture it. The year is 80 AD. The Roman Empire, still reeling from the devastating eruption of Mount Vesuvius just a year prior, is about to witness an event designed to heal, unite, and astound. Emperor Titus, the son of the great Vespasian, is ready to unveil his father's legacy and his own gift to the Roman people, the Flavian amphitheater. A structure so colossal, so magnificent, that future generations will simply call it the Colosseum. For nearly a decade, Rome had watched this marvel rise from the ground. It was built on the site of Nero's extravagant Golden House, a symbolic act of returning land to the public that the controversial emperor had claimed for himself. The construction, funded by the spoils from the Jewish War, was a monumental undertaking, showcasing the peak of Roman engineering and the might of the empire. Vespasian had started it, but it was his son, Titus, hailed as the delight and darling of the human race, who would see it to completion and throw the greatest party the world had ever seen. The stage was set not just for entertainment, but for a powerful statement of imperial power and generosity. Imagine the buzz in the city. Invitations, or tesserai, small clay tokens with seat numbers, were distributed throughout Rome. From senators in their lavishly decorated lower tiers to the common plebeians in the upper wooden seats, everyone had a place. On the opening day, the city would have been a sea of people, all flowing towards this new heart of Rome. The air would be thick with anticipation, the smell of street food, and the collective awe of tens of thousands of citizens about to witness history. This wasn't just the opening of a new building, it was the dawn of a new era for Roman entertainment and public life. As Titus entered the imperial box, a deafening roar would have erupted from the crowd. He was a popular emperor, known for his generosity, especially after the disasters that had marked the start of his reign. Inaugurating the Colosseum was his grand gesture, a promise of stability and prosperity. He declared the commencement of the inaugural games, or asterisk, Ludiast, which would last for an unprecedented 100 days and nights. This was not just a festival. It was a carefully orchestrated spectacle, designed to display the wealth, reach, and power of Rome to its citizens and the world. The first days of the games were a showcase of everything the Roman world had to offer. The morning sessions, known as the Venations asterisk, or wild beast hunts, were a breathtaking display of the empire's vast territories. Exotic animals from the furthest corners of the known world, lions from Africa, bears from Caledonia, crocodiles from the Nile, tigers from the east, were brought to the arena. Skilled hunters, the Venatorus asterisk, would face these creatures in elaborate staged hunts, often featuring painted backdrops and scenery to mimic their natural habitats. It was a geography lesson written in blood and sand, a visceral reminder to every spectator that Rome's domain was boundless. But Titus had a surprise that would leave the crowd speechless. On one of the days, the arena floor was flooded. Yes, you heard that right. Using a complex system of aqueducts and sluice gates, the Colosseum was transformed into a giant basin for a naumachia, a staged naval battle, specially designed, flat-bottomed ships, manned by prisoners or trained fighters, reenacted famous naval conflicts. Oarsmen rowed, soldiers clashed on the decks, and the crowd watched, mesmerized, as a sea battle unfolded in the very heart of their city. This feat of engineering was the ultimate display of Roman ingenuity, proving that they could command not just land, but water itself. As the games progressed, the afternoons were reserved for the most infamous and popular events, the gladiatorial combats. These weren't just chaotic brawls. They were highly organized contests between professionally trained fighters, each with a specific style and set of equipment. You had the Ricerius, with his net and trident, pitted against the heavily armed Cicuta. The Mermillo, with his fish-crested helmet, might face the nimble Threx. These men were celebrities, heroes to the masses, their fates hanging on the roar of the crowd and the whim of the Emperor. The combats were a brutal, yet captivating, ballet of skill, courage, and survival that embodied the Roman martialist spirit. Beyond the main events, the 100 days were filled with other diversions. There were public executions, a grim reminder of Roman justice. There were comedic acts, acrobats, and musicians. And in a remarkable display of his generosity, Titus would often have wooden balls thrown into the crowd. Each ball was a lottery ticket, redeemable for prizes ranging from food and clothing to property and even ships. It was a carnival of epic proportions, ensuring that every person who attended left with a story to tell and a renewed sense of pride in being Roman. Sheer scale of the 100 days is staggering. Ancient historians like Cassius Dio report that over 9,000 wild animals were slain during the inaugural games. Thousands of gladiators fought, and countless lives were lost. While we view these events with modern sensibilities, for the Romans, this was the ultimate form of entertainment and a cornerstone of their culture. It was a cathartic release, a display of martial virtue, and a reinforcement of the social order. The emperor provided bread and circuses, and in doing so, he secured the loyalty and adoration of his people. When the 100th day finally drew to a close, and the last of the sand was raked clean, the Colosseum had been truly consecrated. It was no longer just a structure of stone and concrete. It was a living monument, baptized in spectacle. Titus's game cemented its place in the Roman psyche and set the standard for all future events held within its walls. The Flavian amphitheater stood as a triumphant symbol of the Flavian dynasty's success, a testament to Roman engineering, and a gift to the people that would entertain them for centuries. It was a powerful message. Despite fires, plagues, and volcanic eruptions, Rome was eternal, and its power was absolute. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the inauguration of the Colosseum. It's a moment in history where architecture, politics, and culture collide in the most spectacular way. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more stories from the ancient world. Let me know in the comments what aspect of the inaugural games you find most fascinating. Until next time, stay curious. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey through Roman history. In our last episode, we explored the reign of Emperor Titus, a ruler remembered for his generosity and dedication to his people. But his time in power was marked by a series of calamities, none more famous or devastating than the cataclysm that struck the Bay of Naples in the year 79 AD today. We turn our attention to one of the most infamous natural disasters in human history, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Imagine this scene. It's a late summer morning in the bustling, sun-drenched towns of Pompeii and Herculaneum. These weren't just sleepy villages. They were vibrant Roman resort towns, popular getaways for Rome's wealthy elite. The streets are alive with the sounds of commerce, the chatter of neighbors, and the laughter of children. The fertile slopes of Mount Vesuvius, a mountain they knew only as a gentle, green giant, provided rich soil for vineyards and olive groves. For centuries, it had stood silent sentinel over the bay. The people living in its shadow had no idea they were residing on a geological time bomb. There had been warning signs, of course, but no one knew how to read them. A major earthquake had rocked the region 17 years earlier, in 62 AD, causing widespread damage. The Romans, practical as ever, simply rebuilt. Minor tremors were a common occurrence in the days leading up to the eruption, so frequent that people had grown accustomed to them, dismissing them as a part of life. The very concept of a volcano, as we understand it, didn't exist in their vocabulary. To them, Vesuvius was just a mountain. Then, around noon on August 24th, 79 AD, the mountain roared to life. With an explosion of unimaginable force, a dark, menacing column of ash, pumice, and gas shot miles into the sky. It was a sight of terrifying, apocalyptic beauty. Pliny the Younger, who witnessed the event from a safe distance across the bay in Misenum, later described it in a letter. He wrote that the cloud resembled a colossal pine tree, rising on a long trunk and then splitting off into branches. This Plinian eruption, as it's now known in volcanology, marked the beginning of the end for the cities below. For the people of Pompeii, the first few hours brought a terrifying rain of lightweight pumice, stones, and ash. It wasn't immediately lethal, and many residents used this time to flee, grabbing what valuables they could and making a desperate run for safety. But for those who hesitated, stayed behind to protect their property, or sought shelter indoors, the situation was about to become far more dire. The falling pumice began to accumulate, piling up at an astonishing rate, blocking doorways and causing roofs to collapse under the immense weight. The sky turned black as night, pierced only by flashes of lightning generated within the ash cloud. Panic and confusion reigned. As the hours wore on, the nature of the eruption changed. The massive column in the sky, now too heavy to support itself, collapsed. This triggered a series of pyroclastic surges and flows, superheated fast-moving avalanches of gas, ash, and rock. These were the true killers, moving at hundreds of miles per hour with temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. They were utterly uncertain. The first surge raced down the western flank of Vesuvius, straight towards the coastal town of Herculaneum was closer to the crater than Pompeii, but had initially been spared the worst of the ashfall due to the wind direction. Many of its residents had fled towards the shore, hoping to be rescued by sea. Archaeologists discovered hundreds of skeletons huddled in the boathouses along the beach. Men, women, and children who died instantly. As the searing cloud enveloped them, the town itself was buried under more than 60 feet of volcanic material, which later solidified into hard rock, encasing and preserving it in a way that was starkly different from Pompeii. Back in Pompeii, the pyroclastic flows arrived later, in the early hours of the next day. Anyone left in the city was doomed. The searing heat and toxic gases killed them in an instant, often preserving their final, tragic postures. The fine ash that followed buried them completely, creating a detailed mold of their bodies at the moment of death. It is these plaster casts, made by archaeologists in the 19th century by pouring plaster into the voids left by the decayed body, that provide such a haunting and personal connection to the victims of Vesuvius. They show us people cowering in corners, families huddled together, and individuals trying to shield their faces from the inevitable. When the eruption finally subsided, the landscape was unrecognizable. The vibrant towns of Pompeii and Herculaneum, along with others like Stabia and Oplantis, had vanished from the face of the earth, buried under a thick blanket of volcanic debris. The very course of the Sarno River was altered, and the coastline was pushed further out to sea. For the Roman Empire, the news was a profound shock. Emperor Titus, ever the responsible leader, immediately organized a massive relief effort. He traveled to the region himself, appointed senators to oversee aid, and used funds from the imperial treasury to help the survivors in an attempt to rebuild. But there was no rebuilding Pompeii or Herculaneum. They were lost their names, and locations eventually fading into legend. For nearly 1,700 years, they slept beneath the earth. It wasn't until the 18th century that they were rediscovered, and systematic excavations began. What archaeologists found was nothing short of a miracle, a Roman world frozen in time. Unlike other Roman sites that were built over pillaged or eroded by time, Pompeii and Herculaneum offered an unparalleled glimpse into daily life in the 1st century AD. The volcanic ash had acted as a preservative, protecting buildings, frescoes, mosaics, and even everyday objects from decay. We can walk the stone-paved streets, enter the homes of the rich and the poor, see the bakeries with carbonized loaves of bread still in the ovens, and read the graffiti scribbled on the walls. In Herculaneum, the preservation was even more extraordinary. The dense, wet material that buried the town carbonized organic materials like wood, preserving doors, beds, and even a library of papyrus scrolls. These finds have been invaluable to historians, providing a level of detail about Roman life that would have otherwise been lost forever. The eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD was an immense tragedy that cost thousands of lives. It shook the Roman Empire and served as a terrifying reminder of the power of nature. But paradoxically, this disaster also created a unique and priceless treasure for posterity. By destroying Pompeii and Herculaneum, Vesuvius also preserved them, allowing us today to connect with the ancient world in a deeply human and visceral way. It's a somber but fascinating chapter in our story of Rome, a moment where history and geology collided with catastrophic force. Thank you so much for joining me today to explore this incredible story. It's a powerful reminder of both the fragility of life and the resilience of history. If you found this video interesting, please give it a thumbs up. And you won't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next episode. We always appreciate your support. See you next time. Upbeat, engaging historical music begins and then fades to a background hum. Hello, history lovers. And welcome back to our deep dive into the eruption of Vesuvius. Last time, we witnessed the utter devastation of Pompeii and Herculaneum, a tragedy of epic proportions. But what happens after the ash settles? When the world is covered in darkness and the survivors are scattered and lost, that's when the true character of a leader is revealed. Today, we're relooking at the man at the helm of the Roman Empire during this crisis, the Emperor Titus. And his response would echo through the ages. Just imagine the scene. News of the disaster, carried by frantic messengers, finally reaches Rome. The scale of it is almost incomprehensible. An entire region, the beautiful and prosperous Bay of Naples, wiped off the map. Panic could have easily set in. The Senate could have devolved into chaos. But Emperor Titus, who had only been on the throne for a few months, acted with a decisiveness and compassion that, frankly, was remarkable for the era. He didn't just see a logistical problem. He saw human suffering on a scale that demanded an immediate, imperial-level response. According to the historian Suetonius, Titus showed not merely the concern of an emperor, but also the deep love of a father. This wasn't just political posturing. Titus immediately declared a state of emergency and began organizing one of the largest relief efforts the Roman world had ever seen. He understood that time was the enemy. People were homeless, injured, and starving. The initial response had to be swift and substantial. He mobilized resources, pulling from the vast coffers of the Roman state to fund the initial rescue and aid missions. One of his first and most brilliant moves was the creation of a special commission. He appointed two ex-consuls, men of high rank and proven administrative skill, to oversee the relief efforts directly in Campania. These officials were called the Curatores Restituendae Campaniae, essentially curators for the restoration of Campania. Their job was immense: coordinate shelter for the homeless, distribute food and water, organize medical aid, and begin the grim task of assessing the damage and searching for any remaining survivors. By appointing such high-ranking officials, Titus sent a clear message. This was the #1 priority of the empire. But Titus didn't just delegate. This is where his story becomes truly extraordinary. He announced that he would personally visit the disaster zone. Now, think about this. The area was still dangerous. The ground was unstable, the air was likely still thick with dust, and there was the constant threat of further seismic activity. For an emperor, the most powerful man in the world, to place himself in that environment was a huge risk and a powerful symbol. He wasn't ruling from a distant, safe palace in Rome. He was going to walk among the ruins and see the devastation with his own eyes. When Titus arrived in Campania, he wasn't there for a photo opportunity. He was there to work. He met with curators astris, spoke with survivors, and listened to their harrowing stories. Can you imagine the impact of that? A refugee, having lost everything: their home, their family, their entire world, suddenly finds themselves face to face with the emperor, who is not just offering condolences, but actively listening and promising aid. It must have been an incredible source of hope in a moment of absolute despair. And Titus put his money where his mouth was. Here's one of the most incredible parts of his response. He made a groundbreaking decision regarding the property of those who had died in the eruption without leaving any heirs. Normally, such property, known as bona caduca, would automatically revert to the imperial treasury. It was a standard source of income for the state. But Titus ordered that all of this property, the lands, the villas, the fortunes of the wealthy who perished, be redirected, not to the treasury, not to his own pockets, but directly into the relief fund for the restoration of Pompeii. He was essentially taking a massive potential windfall for the state and giving it all back to the victims. This was a radical act of public generosity. Furthermore, he recognized that this alone wouldn't be enough. The scale of the rebuilding effort was just too vast. So, Titus also committed huge sums from his own personal funds. The asterisk, fiscus asterisk, or the emperor's private purse. He poured his own wealth into rebuilding the shattered communities. He wasn't just using state money. He was using his money. This personal sacrifice was not lost on the Roman people. It demonstrated a level of personal commitment that went far beyond the duties of his office. The effort focused not just on the destroyed cities like Pompeii and Herculaneum, which were deemed too far gone to be rebuilt, but on helping the survivors resettle. The funds were used to build new housing in nearby towns like Naples, Nola, and Capua. They provided financial support for refugees to start new lives, to find new work, and to rebuild their families. It was a comprehensive plan that addressed both the immediate needs of survival and the long-term challenge of recovery. He didn't just patch the wound. He tried to heal the community. Historians like Cassius Dio, who wrote over a century later, still spoke of Titus's actions with admiration. Dio tells us that Titus was present, encouraging the workers, comforting the afflicted, and distributing aid. His hands-on approach earned him immense popularity, and the title, Amor si Delicia Humani Generis, which translates to the love and delight of the human race. In an age of often brutal and self-serving Titus stood out as a beacon of humanity. His response to Vesuvius became a defining moment of his short but beloved reign. He showed the Roman world that an emperor could be powerful and, at the same time, profoundly compassionate. Titus's relief effort set a new standard for imperial disaster response. It was organized, well-funded, and, most importantly, deeply human. He didn't see the victims as statistics. He saw them as his people, his responsibility. While the tragedy of Vesuvius can never be diminished, the story of the aftermath is one of surprising hope, led by an emperor who chose compassion over avarice and duty over distance. He proved that even in the face of nature's most destructive fury, human kindness and strong leadership could make a world of difference. Thank you so much for joining me for this chapter of the Vesuvius saga. It's a powerful reminder that history is not just about dates and disasters, but about the people who live through them and the leaders who guide them. If you found this story as moving as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the past. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think of Emperor Titus's response. Until next time, stay curious. Hello history enthusiasts! And welcome back to our series on the Roman emperors. Today, we delve into a chapter of Roman history marked by unforeseen disasters and the remarkable leadership of an emperor who earned the title, the darling of mankind. We're talking about Titus and the Aries 88. The Roman Empire had just begun to heal from the catastrophic eruption of Vesuvius, a tragedy that had tested Titus in his very first year as emperor. The people were rebuilding. A sense of fragile optimism was in the air, and it seemed as though the worst was over. But fate, as it often does in the annals of history, had a cruel twist in store for the eternal city. Just as Rome was finding its footing, disaster struck again, not with a single earth-shattering blow, but with a relentless and devastating 1-2 punch. First came the fire. Not just any fire, but a conflagration that swept through the heart of Rome, raging for 3 days and 3 nights. Imagine the scene. The sky, thick with black smoke, glowing an ominous orange as flames devoured everything in their path. This wasn't a minor incident. This was a catastrophe on a grand scale. The fire consumed some of the city's most iconic and important landmarks. The magnificent temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill, the very heart of Roman religion and a symbol of the empire's power, was reduced to ashes once more, having only recently been rebuilt after a previous fire. The Pantheon Agrippas, original masterpiece, a testament to Roman architectural genius, was engulfed. The Baths of Agrippa, the Deribitarium, the largest public building in Rome, used for counting vote sand, even parts of Pompeii, Theater were all lost to the inferno. This wasn't just a loss of buildings, it was an assault on the cultural and political identity of Rome. The fire didn't discriminate. It tore through public monuments and private homes alike, leaving a trail of destruction, displacement, and despair. The city that was the center of the known world was now a smoldering ruin, its citizens homeless and in shock. The sense of security that the people had just begun to regain was shattered. Once again, they looked to their emperor. How would Titus respond to this new crisis? In the face of this overwhelming disaster, Titus didn't falter. He didn't hide in his palace or point fingers. Instead, he stepped into the role of a true father to his people, a patera patriae in every sense of the word. Ancient historians like Suetonius and Cassius Dio paint a picture of an emperor moved by profound empathy. Titus reportedly declared that he considered the losses from the fire to be his own personal tragedy. This wasn't just political rhetoric. His actions proved his sincerity. He immediately channeled vast sums of money from the imperial treasury into relief and reconstruction efforts. But he didn't stop there. In a move that demonstrated his deep commitment, Titus took the decorations and furnishings from his own imperial residencies and villas and dedicated them to rebuilding the damaged temples and public buildings. Think about that for a moment. The emperor was literally stripping his own home to help restore the city. It was a powerful symbolic gesture that resonated deeply with the Roman populace. He wasn't just an aloof ruler throwing money at a problem. He was a fellow citizen sharing in the sacrifice. He also set up a special commission aboard a distinguished Roman knights to oversee the rebuilding process, ensuring that the work was done efficiently and effectively. His response was swift, personal, and profoundly compassionate. But as if a devastating fire wasn't enough, another horseman of the apocalypse was waiting in the wings. Following the fire, while the city was still choked with ash and the people were grieving, a terrible plague broke out. This was a common and terrifying feature of the ancient world, with the city's infrastructure damaged and thousands of people displaced. Often in crowded and unsanitary conditions, the stage was set for disease to spread like wildfire. The sources don't specify the exact nature of the plague, but they describe its horrifying toll. The death count was staggering, and a palpable sense of dread and helplessness gripped the city. The gods, it seemed, had turned their backs on Rome. The air, once filled with the sounds of a bustling metropolis, was now filled with the sounds of mourning. For any ruler, this combination of disasters would have been a legacy-defining crisis. For Titus, it was the ultimate test of his character. And once again, he rose to the occasion. He approached the plague not just as an emperor, but as a chief caregiver. He didn't flee the city, as many of the wealthy might have. He stayed. He employed every resource at his disposal to combat the pestilence. He utilized both human and divine remedies. On the practical side, he brought in physicians and medicines from all over the empire to tend to the sick. He made sure that aid was available to as many as possible, without regard for social status. His focus was on saving lives and alleviating suffering. On the spiritual side, understanding the Roman psyche, he also made sure to perform numerous religious rites and sacrifices. He sought to appease the gods and restore the people's morale, showing them that their emperor was doing everything in his power, both on earth and in the heavens, to bring an end to their suffering. He was often seen in public, personally comforting the afflicted and overseeing the relief efforts. This hands-on approach, this willingness to share in the danger and grief of his people, was unprecedented. It solidified his reputation not just as a capable administrator, but as a deeply caring and humane leader. He was truly living up to the title the people had bestowed upon him. Amore si delicia, humani generis. The love and delight of the human race. Let's pause and consider the sheer magnitude of what Titus faced in his short reign. First, the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD, bearing Pompeii and Herculaneum. The very next year, Ochenta, this catastrophic 3-day fire in Rome, and immediately following that, a deadly plague. Any one of these events would be considered a major disaster. To face all three in succession is almost biblical in its scope. It's a testament to the resilience of the Roman people. But even more so, it's a testament to the extraordinary character of their emperor. While his father Vespasian was the pragmatic builder who restored financial stability, and his brother Domitian would become the stern autocrat, Titus carved out a unique legacy in just 2 short years. His reign became the benchmark against which future good emperors would be measured. His response to these disasters was the gold standard of imperial compassion. He demonstrated that true power wasn't just about military might or grand construction projects. It was about the welfare of your people. He showed that in times of crisis, a leader's most valuable asset is empathy. By taking the people's losses as his own, by sacrificing his personal wealth, and by staying to face the danger alongside them, Titus forged an unbreakable bond with his subjects. He turned a period of unimaginable tragedy into his finest hour, cementing his place in history as one of Rome's most beloved emperors. His reign may have been tragically short, but his legacy of compassion and leadership endured for centuries. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey back to ancient Rome. The story of Titus and the great fire and plague is a powerful reminder that history is shaped not just by grand battles, but by how societies and their leaders respond to crisis. What do you find most impressive about Titus's leadership? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about the fascinating figures of the Roman Empire, please give us a thumbs up. And do you want to forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter? We truly appreciate your support. Until next time, stay curious. Imagine this. The year is 80 AD, the largest amphitheater the world has ever seen. A monumental structure of travertine and concrete has just been completed in the heart of Rome. This isn't just a building, it's a statement. This is the Flavian amphitheater, but history will know it by another name, the Colosseum. And to celebrate its grand opening, Emperor Titus is about to throw the biggest, most extravagant party in history, a party that will last for 100 straight days. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey through ancient Rome. Today, we're stepping into the deafening roar of the crowd, smelling the sand and the sweat, and witnessing the spectacle that defined an empire, the inaugural games of the Colosseum. This wasn't just entertainment, it was a carefully orchestrated display of power, wealth, and the sheer might of Rome. When Titus inaugurated the Colosseum, he needed to make a mark, to surpass the spectacles of all emperors before him, and he succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The poet Martial, who was there to see it all, wrote that whatever one had seen before was nothing compared to this. So, what made it so special? Let's start with the scale. 100 days of non-stop events. Every morning, the games would kick off with the Venations, or the wild beast hunts. But these weren't just a few animals. Picture this. The arena floor, a vast, sandy expanse, suddenly transforms. Scenery machines, operated by hundreds of men below the stage, hoist entire forests and rocky landscapes into view. And from hidden gates emerged creatures from the farthest corners of the Roman Empire. We're talking about graceful cranes and stags hunted by trained hounds, but also the truly exotic. Rhinoceroses from Africa, charging with unstoppable force. Elephants from India. Titans of the ancient world. Tigers from the distant east. Crocodiles from the Nile. And bears from the mountains of Caledonia. Thousands upon thousands of animals were brought to Rome for these games. It was a living, breathing, and often brutal exhibition of Rome's dominion over the natural world. It was a message to every citizen and every visitor. There is no land, no creature that Rome cannot conquer and bring to its capital for your entertainment. The logistics alone are staggering to consider capturing these animals, transporting them thousands of miles by land and sea, and keeping them alive until their moment in the arena. But the spectacle didn't stop there. As midday approached, the arena would be cleared for a different kind of event, one that served a grimmer purpose. This was the time for public executions. Condemned criminals, known as Noxi, would face their end in a variety of gruesome theatrical ways. Some were forced into fatal reenactments of myths, playing the role of a character who meets a tragic end, making mythology a horrifying reality. This part of the games was a stark and brutal reminder of Roman justice and the consequences of defying the law. It was a visceral display of the state's power over life and death. Then, as the sun began to set, came the main event. The moment everyone was waiting for. The air would crackle with anticipation as the gladiators, the superstars of the ancient world, marched into the arena. They would parade before the emperor's box, raise their arms in salute, and declare their famous line. The gladiatorial contests were the heart of the Roman games. These weren't just random brawls. They were highly organized duels between professionally trained fighters, each with their own specialized equipment and fighting style. You had the Retiarius, with his net and trident, nimble and quick, facing the heavily armored Secutor, whose helmet left only 2 small eye holes. You had the Threx with his small square shield and curved sword, and the Mamillo with his large oblong shield and fish-crested helmet. Each matchup was a tactical chess game of skill, strength, and endurance. These men were often slaves or prisoners of war, but a successful gladiator could achieve fame, fortune, and even freedom. They were idolized by the public. Their images appeared in mosaics and graffiti across the city. They were the ultimate symbols of Roman virtue's courage, manliness, and discipline in the face of death. But perhaps the most jaw-dropping spectacle of all during those inaugural games was something that seems almost impossible today. The Naumachia, or the mock naval battles. How do you have a sea battle in the middle of a stone amphitheater? The Romans, master engineers that they were, had a solution. The floor of the Colosseum was designed to be flooded. In a matter of hours, the entire arena could be filled with several feet of water, transforming it into a miniature sea. Specially built, scaled-down warships, manned by thousands of combatants, would then engage in epic reenactments of famous, historical naval victories. Imagine sitting in the stands, watching as fleets clash, or as splinter, and men battle on the decks of ships, all within the confines of the Colosseum. It was the ultimate demonstration of Rome's engineering prowess and its ability to literally reach the world for its own amusement. Marseille described seeing nereids and other sea nymphs swimming in the waters, a testament to the theatricality that accompanied the violence. So why go to such incredible lengths? Why spend a fortune on 100 days of games? It was a concept known as bread and circuses. By providing the populace with free food and spectacular, free entertainment, the emperor could ensure their loyalty and distract them from political or economic problems. The Colosseum was a gift to the Roman people, but it was also a tool of control. It brought people from all social classes together, from the emperor and senators in their marble seats to the common folk in the upper tiers, uniting them in a shared, visceral experience of what it meant to be Roman. The games were a reflection of the empire itself, vast, diverse, powerful, and often brutal. They showcased Rome's wealth through the exotic animals, its engineering genius through the naval battles, its absolute justice through the executions, and its martial spirit through the gladiators. The 100 days of inaugural games were more than just a celebration. They were the grandest piece of propaganda ever conceived, a spectacle that cemented the legacy of the Flavian Dynasty and an image of Roman power that echoes through to this very day. Thank you so much for joining me on this dive into the Colosseum's incredible opening ceremony. It's a fascinating, if sometimes disturbing, look at the heart of the Roman world. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more stories from history. We love hearing from you, so drop a comment below with what part of the games you find most astonishing. Until next time, stay curious. Hello history lovers, and welcome back to our deep dive into the lives of the Roman Empire. Last time, we witnessed the dramatic conclusion to the First Jewish-Roman War and the magnificent triumph, celebrated by Vespasian and his son, Titus. Today, we're shifting our focus from the battlefield to the very heart of Rome, to see how Titus, once a military commander, transformed into one of the most beloved emperors in Roman history. This is the story of how he built a legacy of goodwill that would echo through the ages. When Vespasian passed away in 79 AD, the reins of the vast Roman Empire fell into the hands of his eldest son, Titus. Now, you might think this was a seamless transition, but there was a palpable sense of anxiety in Rome. Titus's reputation before becoming emperor was, well, let's just say it was mixed. He was known as a formidable general, yes, but also as a man who could be ruthless. His role in the destruction of Jerusalem was still fresh in people's minds. Whispers in the Senate even hinted at his extravagance and his close relationships, which some viewed with suspicion. There were fears he might become another Nero, another Caligula tyrant ruling through fear and excess. The Roman people held their breath, waiting to see which Titus would emerge. The stern soldier, or a benevolent ruler. But what happened next surprised everyone. From the moment he ascended the throne, Titus seemed to undergo a profound transformation. He set aside the stern demeanor of his military past and embraced a new role: the father of his people. His first acts as emperor were not to consolidate power or punish enemies, but to extend an olive branch to the very people who feared him most. He immediately declared that he would accept no new accusations of treason, a charge often used and abused by previous emperors to eliminate political rivals and seize their fortunes. This wasn't just a minor legal tweak, it was a seismic shift in the political climate of Rome. The notorious network of informers, the delatores, who thrived on manufacturing treason charges for personal gain, suddenly found themselves out of a job. Titus effectively dismantled the system of paranoia that had gripped the Roman elite for decades. He didn't stop there. He took a firm stand against the abuse of the asterisk laws, which pertain to any offense against the dignity of the Roman state, or the emperor himself. Under tyrannical rulers, simply telling a joke about the emperor or melting down a statue bearing his image could be a capital offense. Titus declared an end to this madness. He famously said that he could not be insulted, for he had done nothing to deserve it, and he cared little for lies told about him. This was a radical display of confidence and security. By refusing to be provoked, he disarmed his critics and showed the Senate and the people that he was a ruler who stood above petty squabbles and political persecution. Imagine the collective sigh of relief that swept through the city. For the first time in a long time, Romans could speak and live without constantly looking over their shoulders. Titus's generosity extended beyond the political sphere and directly into the pockets of the Roman citizens. The empire, while wealthier, relied on a complex and often burdensome system of taxation. Titus, understanding the financial strain on the populace, began his reign with an act of incredible generosity. He waived certain unpaid taxes. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture. It was a significant economic relief for countless families and businesses. It was a clear message that his priority was the welfare of his subjects, not simply enriching the imperial treasury. He also sponsored lavish public games and spectacles. But unlike the self-indulgent displays of some of his predecessors, Titus's games were for the people. He would often attend in person, engaging with the crowd, listening to their petitions, and sharing in their entertainment. He was making himself accessible, showing that he was one of them. His reforms also touched upon the legal system. He streamlined processes and took measures to ensure fairer trials. One of his most popular moves was to release numerous prisoners. While we don't have exact details on every case, it's understood that many of these were individuals locked away on dubious charges, victims of the very political paranoia he was working to dismantle. Freeing them was another powerful symbol of a new era of justice and clemency. He was actively undoing the damage of past regimes, healing the wounds of a society long plagued by fear. Each of these actions, whether big or small, was a deliberate step in building a bridge between the imperial palace and the ordinary people of Rome. The senators, who'd initially been his most prominent skeptics, were won over completely. Titus treated them with unparalleled respect. He consulted them on matters of state, attended their sessions regularly, and upheld the dignity of their ancient institution. He swore an oath that he would never execute a senator, a promise that stood in stark contrast to the purges conducted by emperors before him. This collaborative approach fostered a sense of partnership rather than subjugation. The senators, in turn, showered him with honors and affection. The man they had once feared as a potential tyrant was now hailed as a paragon of virtue. The historian Suetonius, who is often critical of emperors, famously called Titus the delight and darling of the human race. This wasn't just empty flattery. It was a reflection of the genuine and widespread affection he had earned. In just a short time, Titus had completely reshaped his public image and the very nature of imperial rule. He replaced fear with security, paranoia with trust, and avarice with generosity. He demonstrated that true power wasn't found in the ability to crush your enemies, but in the ability to win the hearts of your people. He understood that a stable and prosperous empire was built not on a foundation of terror, but on a foundation of mutual respect and goodwill. His reign, though tragically short, would become the gold standard against which future emperors were measured. For centuries to come, when a new emperor took the throne, the Senate would offer a prayer that he might be more fortunate than Augustus, and better than Trajan. But in the hearts of many, the unspoken wish was that he might be as beloved as Titus. Sadly, this golden age was not to last. As we'll explore in our next episode, Titus's reign of peace and prosperity would be shattered by a series of unimaginable disasters that would test his leadership and the resilience of the Roman people to their very limits. The darling of the human race was about to face his greatest challenges. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the life of Emperor Titus. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn what happens next, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter of our story. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, stay curious. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our series on the Roman emperors. Today, we're diving into the life of a ruler whose name became synonymous with generosity and compassion. A man hailed as the delight of mankind. This is the story of Titus Flavius Vesuvius, or simply Titus. In the grand, often brutal, tapestry of Roman history, Titus stands out. While many emperors are remembered for their military conquests, political purges, or extravagant cruelties, Titus is celebrated for something far rarer. His kindness. It's a reputation that has echoed through nearly 2 millennia, thanks in large part to ancient historians like Suetonius and Cassius. They paint a picture of a ruler who genuinely seemed to prioritize the well-being of his people over personal power. But was this image the whole truth? Or was it a masterful piece of imperial propaganda? To understand Titus the Benevolent, we first have to look at the man he was before he wore the purple. Born in 39 AD, Titus was the eldest son of a no-nonsense general who clawed his way to the throne after the chaotic year of the 4 emperors. Titus was groomed for power from a young age. He grew up in the imperial court, receiving a top-tier education alongside Britannicus, the son of Emperor Claudius. This early exposure to the inner workings of Roman politics gave him an unparalleled advantage. His early career was marked by military distinction. He served as a military tribune in both Germania and Battania, earning a reputation as a capable and courageous officer. But it was his role in the First Jewish-Roman War that truly defined his pre-imperial legacy. Serving under his father, Vespasian, Titus was instrumental in suppressing the revolt. When Vespasian left for Rome to claim the emperorship in 69 AD, he left Titus in command to finish the job. The siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD was a brutal and devastating affair. It culminated in the destruction of the Second Temple, a cataclysmic event in Jewish history. Ancient sources describe a bloody and merciless campaign. This is the great paradox of Titus. The man who would later be celebrated for his mercy was responsible for one of the most ruthless military actions of his time. How do we reconcile the conqueror of Jerusalem with the delight of mankind? This is a question historians have grappled with for centuries. Some argue that his actions in Judea were simply the duties of a Roman general, carrying out the orders of the state. In the context of Roman warfare, the siege, while brutal, wasn't necessarily out of the ordinary. Others suggest that the experience may have profoundly changed him, perhaps instilling in him a deep understanding of human suffering. When Vespasian died in 79 AD, Titus ascended to the throne. The transition was seamless, a testament to the stability his father had brought to the empire. But many in Rome were apprehensive. Titus had a reputation for being ruthless, not just from the war, but also from his time as the head of his father's Praetorian Guard, where he acted as a sort of enforcer, eliminating political threats. The Roman elite worried they were getting another Caligula or Nero. They couldn't have been more wrong. From the moment he became emperor, Titus seemed to undergo a remarkable transformation. He immediately put a stop to the treason trials that had plagued previous reigns and instilled fear in the Senate. He refused to accept accusations brought by informers, a common and corrupt practice used to seize the property of wealthy citizens. Suetonius famously recounts that Titus declared he would rather be killed than kill. One of the most famous anecdotes about his reign perfectly captures this spirit. The story goes that one evening at dinner, Titus realized he had not performed a single act of kindness, or granted a favor to anyone all day. He lamented to his companions, "Friends, I have lost a day." This simple phrase became the defining motto of his rule. It suggests a man who felt a genuine, daily responsibility to use his immense power for good. His generosity was legendary. He completed the Flavian amphitheater, which we now know as the Colosseum, and inaugurated it with 100 days of spectacular games, all free to the public. He also built a new set of public baths, the Baths of Titus, providing the citizens of Rome with luxurious facilities for hygiene and leisure. These massive public works projects weren't just about entertainment. They were a way of giving back to the people and solidifying his image as a benefactor of the city. But Titus's benevolence would be tested by a series of catastrophic disasters that struck during his short reign. Just 2 months after he became emperor, in August of 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted, burying the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum in volcanic ash and pumice. The scale of the disaster was unprecedented. Titus's response was immediate and personal. He traveled to the region to oversee the relief efforts himself, not once, but twice. He appointed special commissioners to aid the survivors and used funds from the imperial treasury to help rebuild the devastated communities. He even repurposed the estates of wealthy citizens who had died in the eruption without heirs, directing their assets toward the relief fund. This was not the act of a distant, uncaring emperor. This was hands-on crisis management, driven by what appeared to be genuine compassion. As if that weren't enough, disaster struck Rome again in 80 AD. A massive fire raged through the city for 3 days and 3 nights, destroying countless homes, temples, and public buildings, including the Pantheon and the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill. Once again, Titus sprang into action. He sold off personal furnishings from his own palaces to raise money for rebuilding, and launched another massive public works program to restore the city. He took personal responsibility for the recovery, assuring the people that the losses were his own. And to top it all off, a severe plague then broke out in the aftermath of the fire. Titus didn't hide in his palace. He engaged with the crisis, employing various physicians and offering state-sponsored sacrifices to the gods, trying everything in his power to combat the epidemic and comfort his ailing people. Through this trifecta of disasters, eruption, fire, and plague, Titus consistently demonstrated a commitment to his people that was truly exceptional. So, why the short reign? After just 2 years and 2 months as emperor, Titus fell ill with a fever and died in September of 81 AD at the age of 41. His final words were reportedly, "I have made but one mistake." What was this mistake? Historians have speculated endlessly. Did he regret something he did during the Jewish War? Did he regret sparing his brother Domitian, who was rumored to be plotting against him? Or was it something else entirely? We'll likely never know for sure, but it adds a layer of poignant mystery to his life. Upon his death, the Roman Senate immediately deified him, a customary honor for well-regarded emperors, but in his case, it felt deeply earned. The people of Rome genuinely mourned the loss of their kind and generous ruler. His brother Domitian succeeded him, and the contrast couldn't have been more stark. Domitian's reign was marked by paranoia, autocracy, and a return to the very treason trials Titus had abolished. This only served to burnish Titus's reputation further in retrospect. Was Titus's benevolence a genuine character trait, or a calculated political strategy? It was likely a bit of both. After the civil war and the stern, fiscally conservative reign of his father, Titus understood the need for a softer touch. Generosity, public works, and disaster relief were excellent ways to win the loyalty of the people in the Senate. It was good politics. However, the consistency and personal nature of his actions suggests something more. The story of him losing a day, his personal oversight of disaster relief, and his refusal to engage in political paint a picture of a man who, having witnessed the worst of human conflict, chose a different path once he held ultimate power. He may have been a ruthless general in his youth, but as emperor, he governed with a magnanimity that left a lasting impression on the Roman world. Titus proves that power doesn't always have to corrupt. His brief reign stands as a powerful, albeit short, chapter in Roman history, a reminder that a ruler could be remembered not for the enemies they crushed, but for the people they helped. It remains the delight of mankind, an emperor whose greatest legacy was his own humanity. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the life of Titus, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories from the Roman Empire. Let us know in the comments which emperor you'd like to see us cover next. See you in the next one. Hello and welcome back to our series on the Flavian dynasty. Today, we delve into one of the most fascinating and consequential sibling relationships in Roman history. The bond, or perhaps the rivalry, between Titus and Domitian. On one hand, you have Titus, the celebrated military hero, the conqueror of Jerusalem, and by all accounts, a beloved emperor destined for greatness. On the other, his younger brother Domitian, living perpetually in his shadow, consumed by ambition and a burning desire for his own place in the sun. This isn't just a family squabble, it's a dynamic that would ultimately determine the fate of Rome itself. To understand their relationship, we must go back to their youth. Titus, being the elder, was groomed for power from the start. He was educated alongside Britannicus, the son of Emperor Claudius, at the imperial court. He received the best military training and was given significant responsibilities by their father, Vespasian. Titus was charming, capable, and popular. He was the golden boy, the heir apparent, and everyone knew it. Domitian's upbringing was starkly different. While Titus was campaigning with his father in Judea, earning glory and respect, Domitian was left behind in Rome. During the tumultuous year of the 4 emperors, the young Domitian faced real danger, even having to hide to save his life. While he showed some youthful initiative, his experiences were of political chaos and personal vulnerability, not military triumph. He wasn't given the same level of trust or responsibility as Titus. This created a deep-seated feeling of being overlooked, a chip on his shoulder that would grow over time. When Vespasian became emperor, the gap between the brothers widened. Titus was made his father's partner in power, sharing the consulship and holding the crucial command of the Praetorian Guard. He was, for all intents and purposes, Domitian, however, was showered with honors and titles, but given no real authority. He was the emperor's son, but he had no army, no significant political role. Vespasian seemed to deliberately keep him on the sidelines, perhaps wary of his son's unchecked ambition. Imagine the frustration, watching your brother wield immense power while you were relegated to a ceremonial figure. Ancient sources, like Suetonius and Cassius Dio, paint a picture of simmering tension. They claim Domitian was openly jealous of Titus and wasn't shy about expressing his discontent. There are even rumors that Domitian actively plotted against his brother and father, though concrete evidence is scarce. What is clear is that Domitian felt entitled to a share of the power that Titus so effortlessly enjoyed. He saw himself as an equal, yet he was treated as a subordinate, a mere spare to the heir. Titus, for his part, seems to have handled the situation with remarkable grace. Despite the whispers of Domitian's conspiracies, Titus reportedly refused to have his brother punished. He is said to have pleaded with Domitian in private, even with tears in his eyes, begging him to put aside his jealousy and embrace their fraternal bond. Titus publicly declared Domitian his partner and successor, trying to soothe his brother's ego and assure him that his time would come. Was this genuine affection, or a pragmatic attempt to keep a potential rival in check? Perhaps it was a bit of both. Titus, known for his clemency, may have genuinely loved his brother while also understanding the danger an alienated, ambitious family member could pose to the stability of the empire. Then came the turning point, the death of Vespasian, and the accession of Titus in 79 AD. Titus's reign, though tragically short, was immensely popular. He was hailed as the delight and darling of the human race for his generosity, especially after the eruption of Vesuvius and a great fire in Rome. He completed the Colosseum, a project started by his father, and presided over lavish games that won the hearts of the people. Throughout this, Domitian remained in the background, his impatience growing. The most controversial chapter in their story is the death of Titus in 81 AD. Officially, he died of a fever, but rumors began to swirl almost immediately. Suetonius reports a story that as Titus lay dying, he lamented that he was being robbed of his life undeservedly, claiming he had made only one mistake. Some ancient historians interpreted this to mean a mistake in not dealing with Domitian's ambition more harshly. The most damning accusation is that Domitian may have hastened his brother's death, perhaps by abandoning him while he was sick or even by some more sinister means. While there is no definitive proof that Domitian murdered Titus, his actions immediately following his brother's death are telling. He rushed to the Praetorian camp to be hailed as emperor, showing no hesitation in seizing the power he had craved for so long. He did not show the same public grief that Titus had shown for their father. Instead, his reign began under a cloud of suspicion. Once on the throne, Domitian's attitude towards his late brother became complex. On one hand, he deified Titus, following the tradition of honoring a predecessor. He completed the Arch of Titus, a magnificent monument celebrating the victory in Judea. Victory that belonged to Titus, not him. Yet, in his private remarks, he was often critical of Titus, belittling his accomplishments. This contradictory behavior reveals the depth of his insecurity. He needed to honor the Flavian legacy that gave him legitimacy, but he also desperately wanted to step out of Titus's shadow and be recognized for his own merits. The relationship between Titus and Domitian is a timeless tragedy of sibling rivalry amplified by the ultimate prize, the Roman Empire. Titus was the adored older brother, seemingly perfect in every way. Domitian was the ambitious, resentful, younger sibling, whose yearning for recognition would curdle into a paranoia that defined his reign. His rule, though efficient in many ways, became a reign of terror, leading to his own assassination and the end of the Flavian dynasty. It all traces back to that fundamental dynamic, the bond and the break between two brothers who could have ruled together but were instead torn apart by jealousy and ambition. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the lives of Titus and Domitian. It's a powerful reminder that even at the highest levels of power, human emotions and family dynamics can shape the course of history. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'll see you next time. Hello and welcome back to our journey through the annals of Roman history. Today, we arrive at a somber and abrupt turning point, the sudden death of the Emperor Titus. His reign, though brief, was marked by generosity and a genuine connection with his people, making his loss all the more shocking. In 81 CE, after just 2 years and 2 months on the throne, Titus was gone. This wasn't a long, drawn-out decline. It was a sudden event that sent ripples of grief and confusion throughout the Roman Empire. The official story, the one that has largely been passed down through history, is that he succumbed to a fever. He was traveling to the Sabine countryside, to the same family villa where his father Vespasian had died. It was there that he reportedly fell ill and passed away. But history is rarely that simple, is it? Whenever a powerful leader dies unexpectedly, whispers and rumors are sure to follow. And in the case of Titus, those whispers quickly turned into accusations. The most prominent and persistent rumor pointed a finger directly at his own brother and successor, Domitian. Let's explore this theory. The relationship between Titus and Domitian was notoriously strained. Ancient historians like Suetonius and Cassius Dio paint a picture of a younger brother simmering with jealousy and ambition. Domitian felt overshadowed by Titus's military triumphs, particularly the celebrated victory in Judea, and his immense popularity with both the Senate and the common people. He believed he was sidelined, denied the power and recognition he deserved. According to some accounts, Domitian was relentlessly plotting against his brother. He was said to have openly tried to usurp power, and even attempted to rally legions to his side. Titus, ever the benevolent brother, reportedly chose forgiveness over punishment, pleading with Domitian in private to end his conspiracies. He saw it as a family matter, something to be resolved behind closed doors, rather than a state affair warranting a public and brutal response. So, when Titus died, the suspicion that Domitian had a hand in it was almost immediate. The most dramatic version of the story suggests that Domitian, eager to seize the throne, either arranged for his brother to be poisoned or interfered with his medical care. Cassius Dio tells a chilling tale. As Titus lay suffering from the fever, Domitian allegedly ordered him to be placed in a chest packed with snow, supposedly to treat the fever, but in reality, to hasten his death. It's a theatrical and horrifying image, one that perfectly captures the supposed ruthlessness of Domitian. Another version of the poisoning theory is more direct. It suggests that a slow-acting poison was administered, perhaps by a physician in Domitian's employ. Given the political intrigue of the Roman court, this isn't as far-fetched as it might sound. Poison was a well-known, if sinister, political tool. However, it's crucial to remember that these are accusations, recorded by historians who were often writing with a specific agenda, and frequently under later emperors who had a vested interest in portraying Domitian as a tyrant. But what evidence do we have? The truth is, there's no concrete proof. No deathbed confession, no discovered vial of poison, no smoking gun. What we have are the writings of historians who were largely hostile to Domitian's memory. After his own assassination, the Senate condemned his memory of practice, known as damnatio memoria, and subsequent writers were encouraged to paint him in the worst possible light. Attributing the death of the beloved Titus to his evil brother was a very effective way to do just that. So, let's consider the alternative. Titus simply died of natural causes. Fevers were a common and deadly threat in the ancient world. Without modern medicine, a severe illness like malaria or typhoid could easily claim the life of anyone, even an emperor. The fact that he died in the same region, at the same time of year, as his father had, lends some credibility to the idea of a seasonal, infectious disease being the culprit. It's the less dramatic explanation, but often the simplest one is the most likely. Regardless of the cause, the effect of Titus's death was profound. Rome mourned him deeply. He was remembered as the delight and darling of the human race. His short reign had been defined by his response to disasters, the eruption of Vesuvius, a great fire in Rome, and a devastating plague. In each case, he had responded with immense personal generosity, emptying the imperial treasury and his own pockets to aid the victims. He completed the Colosseum and hosted spectacular games, not for his own glory, but for the enjoyment of the people. His last words, as reported by Suetonius, were cryptic and have been debated for centuries. Looking up at the heavens, he lamented that he was dying undeservedly, for he had only one act to repent. What was this one act? Some speculate it was a romantic affair with Domitian's wife, Domitia Longina. Others suggest it was his failure to execute his scheming brother when he had the chance. An act of mercy that now seemed like a fatal mistake. Or perhaps it was something else entirely. A private regret lost to time. We will never know for sure. The Senate, upon hearing of his death, gathered to bestow upon him every honor they could conceive, deifying him as they had his father. The people were heartbroken. They had lost an emperor who seemed to genuinely care for them. And so, the brief, bright era of Titus came to a close. In his place rose his brother, Domitian, a man who would rule for 15 years. His reign would be one of strict control, military efficiency, and ultimately, paranoia and terror, ending in his own assassination. The contrast between the two brothers could not be more stark, and it forever colors our perception of Titus's untimely death. Was Titus a victim of a brother's ambition, or simply a victim of fate and disease? The mystery remains one of history's great what-ifs. What if he had lived? Would his generosity have continued? Would the relationship with the Senate have remained positive? His death, whether by fever or by poison, cut short a promising reign and set Rome on a very different path. Thank you for joining me for this look into a pivotal moment in Roman history. It's a story that shows how quickly fortunes can turn and how a single death can change the course of an empire. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell, so you don't miss our next chapter. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Domitian was guilty? Let's discuss. Until next time, stay curious. Hello history lovers, and welcome back to our deep dive into the Roman Empire. Last time, we navigated the chaotic year of the 4 emperors, a period of civil war that left Rome reeling. Out of that turmoil, a new dynasty emerged, one that would restore order and leave an indelible mark on the city and its empire. Today, we're exploring the legacy of this powerful family, with a special focus on the emperor who many Romans considered the ideal ruler, Titus. When Vesuvius, a pragmatic and down-to-earth general, seized power in 69 AD, his primary goal was to stabilize a fractured state. He wasn't from the old Roman aristocracy. He was a new man, and he brought a fresh, no-nonsense approach to governance. Vespasian's reign was all about getting Rome's house in order. He refilled the treasury, which had been emptied by Nero's excesses and the subsequent civil wars. He did this through a combination of new taxes and fiscal discipline. You've probably heard the famous phrase, pecunia non olet, or money doesn't stink. That was Vespasian's response to criticism about a tax on public urine. It perfectly captures his practical, if sometimes blunt, approach to ruling. But Vespasian's greatest achievement might have been establishing a clear line of succession. Unlike the Julio-Claudians, where succession was often a bloody free-for-all, Vespasian made it clear from the start that his sons, Titus and Domitian, would follow him. This provided a sense of continuity and security that Rome desperately needed. He also began one of the most iconic construction projects in history, one that would become a symbol of Roman power and engineering prowess forever. The Flavian amphitheater, better known to us as the Colosseum. He funded this massive undertaking with spoils from the First Jewish-Roma War, a conflict that had been brutally concluded by his son, Titus. When Vespasian died in 79 AD, the transition of power was seamless. Titus, already a celebrated military hero, became emperor. And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Titus had a reputation for being tough, even ruthless, during his time as his father's right-hand man. Some feared he would be another Nero. Instead, he underwent a remarkable transformation upon taking the throne. It was as if the weight of responsibility brought out the very best in him. He immediately halted all treason trials, which had been a source of fear and paranoia under previous emperors, and he famously declared that he would rather be killed than kill. Titus's reign, though tragically short, is remembered for two major disasters and his extraordinary response to them. Just 2 months after he became emperor, Mount Vesuvius, burying the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum in ash and pumice. It was a catastrophe of unimaginable scale. Titus's reaction was swift and deeply compassionate. He personally traveled to the region to oversee the relief efforts, donating vast sums from his own treasury to aid the survivors and help rebuild. He appointed special commissioners to manage the crisis, treating it not as a distant problem but as a personal responsibility. This was a new kind of imperial leadership, one based on empathy and active involvement. As if that wasn't enough, the very next year, in a great fire swept through Rome, raging for 3 days and destroying landmarks like the Pantheon and the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus. Once again, Titus sprang into action. He sold off furnishings from his own palaces to fund the reconstruction of the city. He didn't just throw money at the problem. He showed the Roman people that he was sharing in their loss and was committed to their recovery. His generosity and tireless work during these crises earned him immense love and respect from the public. They called him Amoris Italicia, Humani Generis, the love and delight of the human race. It was also under Titus that the Colosseum was finally completed and inaugurated. In 80 AD, he hosted a spectacular set of games lasting for 100 days to celebrate its opening. This wasn't just about entertainment, it was a powerful political statement. The Colosseum was built on the land where Nero's extravagant golden house once stood. By turning this private, self-indulgent space into a public amphitheater for all Romans, the Flavians were symbolically giving the city back to its people. It was a brilliant piece of propaganda that cemented their popularity and contrasted their public-minded rule with Nero's tyranny. Titus's reign demonstrated that an emperor could be both powerful and benevolent. He set a moral standard for what a good emperor should be, a protector and benefactor of his people, a man who ruled with justice and mercy. His leadership style, characterized by generosity and a genuine concern for public welfare, became an ideal that future emperors would be measured against 4 centuries. Tragically, Titus's time as emperor was cut short in 81 AD. After just 2 years on the throne, he fell ill and died. His last words were reportedly, "I have made but one mistake." Historians have debated for centuries what that mistake could have been. Some speculate it was sparing his brother Domitian's life, who was rumored to be plotting against him. Whatever it was, Rome mourned him deeply. His death was seen as a national tragedy. The Senate immediately deified him, officially recognizing him as a god, a testament to the profound impact he had in such a short period. The legacy of Titus, and by extension the early Flavians, is one of restoration and renewal. They stabilized the empire, secured its finances, and created some of its most enduring architectural marvels. But more than that, Titus provided a model of virtuous leadership that resonated through Roman history. He proved that absolute power didn't have to corrupt absolutely. He showed that an emperor could be a father to his people, guiding them through crisis with compassion and strength. His short, brilliant reign stands as a shining example of the Roman Empire at its best, a brief but powerful moment when the love and delight of the human race sat on the throne. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the Flavian dynasty. It's a powerful story of recovery and leadership. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more stories from the ancient world. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter, where we'll explore the much darker and more controversial reign of Titus's brother, Domitian. Until next time, stay curious. Hello, and welcome back to our journey through Roman history. Today, we arrive at our final chapter on one of Rome's most fascinating, yet tragically short-trained emperors, Titus. Flavius Vespasian. His story is etched into the very stones of Rome and the ash-preserved streets of Pompeii. How can one man's legacy be defined by both the pinnacle of celebratory spectacle and the depths of natural catastrophe? That's the enigma of Titus, an emperor remembered as a delight of the human race, yet whose reign was marked by events that have echoed through eternity. Let's start with the glory. Picture this. The year is 80 AD. The heart of Rome beats with anticipation. For years, the city has watched a monumental structure rise from the ground, a testament to the Flavian dynasty's power and a gift to the Roman people. This is the Flavian amphitheater, what we now call the Colosseum, and it is Titus who has the honor of inaugurating it. The event was nothing short of legendary. To celebrate its completion, Titus threw a festival that lasted for 100 days. 100 days of games, spectacles, and public celebration. Ancient historians like Suetonius and Cassius Dio paint a vivid picture. Imagine thousands of wild animals, brought from the furthest corners of the empire, participating in staged hunts. Imagine gladiators, the superstars of their day, clashing in mortal combat, their fates decided by the roar of the crowd and the turn of an emperor's thumb. There were even naval battles, the arena floor flooded to recreate epic sea clashes. This wasn't just entertainment. It was a powerful political statement. It was Titus showing the world the might, wealth, and engineering genius of Rome. The Colosseum was his gift, a symbol of stability and prosperity after years of civil war. It was a place for all Romans, rich and poor, to come together and share in the spectacle of the empire. For the people who witnessed it, the inauguration was a moment of supreme pride and joy, solidifying Titus's reputation as a benevolent and generous ruler. The Colosseum, still standing today, is more than just a ruin. It's a permanent monument to Titus's grand vision and his moment of ultimate triumph. It whispers the story of his glory, of a time when Rome was at the zenith of its power and celebrated with a fervor the world had never seen. But history is rarely a simple story of triumph. For every cheer that echoed through the Colosseum, there was a silent scream frozen in time just a year earlier, and 100 miles to the south. In the year 79 AD, while the Colosseum was still under construction, Mount Vesuvius, a volcano that had been dormant for centuries, erupted with unimaginable force. It unleashed a pyroclastic floa, superheated cloud of ash, gas, and rock that buried the bustling Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. The disaster was sudden and catastrophic. In a matter of hours, entire communities were wiped from the face of the earth, perfectly preserved under a thick blanket of volcanic ash. This tragedy fell squarely within the reign of Titus. His reaction to the disaster is a crucial part of his legacy. He didn't just send condolences from a distance. Titus traveled to Campania to personally oversee the relief efforts. He appointed special commissioners to help the survivors and used funds from the imperial treasury to aid the devastated region. He even designated the property of those who died without heirs to be used for the rebuilding of the towns. This compassionate and hands-on response deeply impressed the Roman people. It showed a different side of the emperor, not the military commander or the master of ceremonies, but a genuine caretaker of his people. Pliny the Younger, who witnessed the eruption and wrote about it in detail, described the chaos and terror of that day. But through the darkness, The actions of Titus shone as a beacon of leadership and humanity. When we walk through the silent, excavated streets of Pompeii today, we're walking through a testament to his reign's greatest disaster. The plaster casts of the victims, their final moments captured forever, are a haunting reminder of nature's power. Yet Pompeii also tells the story of an emperor who responded to immense suffering with decisive action and genuine empathy. So we have these two towering landmarks, the Colosseum and Pompeii, bookending Titus's brief time as emperor. One represents the height of human achievement, glory, and celebration. The other represents the terrifying, indiscriminate power of nature and the fragility of human life. It's a stunning duality. How did the Romans themselves view this? They saw it as a sign of the times, a reign touched by both divine favor and divine wrath. The fire of Vesuvius was followed by another disaster in Rome itself. In 80 AD, a great fire that raged for 3 days and destroyed important landmarks, including the Pantheon. Following the fire, a severe plague swept through the city. It seemed as though the gods were testing Titus and his empire. Yet, through it all, Titus's popularity never wavered. He once again threw himself into relief efforts, spending vast sums of his own money to help the victims and rebuild the city. He was seen weeping openly for his people's suffering. This deep, personal connection with his subjects is what ultimately defined him. He was the emperor who celebrated with them in the Colosseum and mourned with them amidst the ruins. He was known for his famous quote, reportedly uttered one evening when he realized he had done no specific good deed for anyone that day. "Friends, I have lost a day." This single sentence encapsulates the sense of duty and benevolence that characterized his rule. It's why, despite the disasters, he was remembered so fondly. Titus ruled for only 2 years, from 79 to 81 AD. His death was as sudden as his reign was short. He fell ill with a fever and died, leaving the empire to his younger, and far more controversial, brother Demetrius. His final words were reportedly, "I have made but one mistake." Historians have debated for centuries what that one mistake could have been. Was it a personal regret? A political decision? Or perhaps his failure to produce an heir, leaving Rome in the hands of his brother, whom he may have distrusted? We will never know for sure. But what we do know is that the Senate and the people of Rome mourned him deeply. They immediately deified him, officially making him a god, a testament to the immense respect and affection he had earned. So, as we reflect on the eternal memory of Titus, we are left with a powerful and complex portrait. He was the conqueror of Jerusalem, a disciplined military man who became a beloved and generous emperor. His reign was a paradox of spectacle and sorrow. The Colosseum stands today as a symbol of his magnificent gesture to the people, a place of shared Roman identity and imperial pride. It is the echo of his glory. A short journey away, the ruins of Pompeii lie in quiet solemnity, a memorial to the immense tragedy that marked his time, but also to his compassionate response in the face of devastation. Together, these two sites form the twin pillars of his legacy. They remind us that history is not just made of grand battles and political maneuvers, but also of human joy and suffering, of spectacular triumphs and devastating losses. Titus presided over both, and his leadership through these extreme highs and lows is what cemented his place in history, not just as an emperor, but as a truly remarkable human being. His short reign serves as a poignant reminder that the true measure of a leader is found not only in times of prosperity, but in how they face the darkest of days. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the life and legacy of Emperor Titus. His story is a powerful one, and Eopit has given you a new perspective on these iconic historical sites. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the fascinating world of ancient history. We have many more stories to tell. Let me know in the comments what you find most compelling about Titus the Glory or the tragedy. Until next time, stay curious.